जो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह पजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह गुर सेवा ते भगत कमाई तब ये मानस देही पाए इस देही को सिमरै देव सो देही भज हर की सेव सो देही भज हर की सेव भजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह.
Welcome, friends, to another podcast in the Holy Truth series, given as always in the name of the Supreme Lord, who once again wishes to impart the very highest truth of what many call God, life and creation to the sincere seekers of the world, especially for the modern age, that's further supported by the holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics of today. Now this high truth of the ages is the noble path of Sant, or path of the true saints, also known as the universal truth, true spirituality, or true religion, that is so graciously gifted to seeking humanity by the great holy masters, perfect saints, and noble mystics in every age, who are themselves the true representative of the Supreme Lord, even today. And although little known among the masses, once encountered, a true seeker can easily recognize that this noble path or true way encompasses all true faiths and beliefs as a noble source of all, details of which can be found in our humble literature, spiritual centers, or YouTube channel, as well as in the Holy Discourse series of ISTAuk.com, among other Sant sources from around the world. But before I begin today's session of spiritual questions and answers, I would first like to make a short introduction about who we are and what we represent here today, especially for those who don't already know. Well, for those who do, then please forgive my repetition. I hope to be brief. We are the International Spiritual Truth Association, or ISTA for short. And although now global, we were originally set up in 2016 in the UK by request of the Holy Masters of the day, who derived their authority from Great Master Baba Savan Singh Ji of the holy lineage of Sant in India, the Levant and Persia. As such, we are an education centre commissioned to provide the very highest truth of Sant to those who wish to know. Thus, we simply build upon the work of the more traditional methods currently available elsewhere. In this way, our given mission is simple: to tell the full truth about true spirituality or true religion from the Supreme Lord's point of view, especially now in the modern age, while also correcting the confusions of the past and even that of the present about what is the real truth. But this high teaching is not new. It is the age-old path of true spirituality, known today as the Holy Truth of Sant which in fact has been discreetly taught throughout the ages to the most sincere seekers of the time, alongside the more familiar religious or philosophical teachings that we all know of. Indeed, Holy Masters tell us that the simple teachings of mass religion and mass philosophy, or even mass science, are only there to provide and to elevate the masses to the position of higher truth seeking, so that they can understand and ultimately practice true spirituality or true religion, with all the love, grace and wonder that such a gift entails. Now for those who do listen and take heed, Holy Masters tell us that they are indeed the most fortunate ones of humanity. As for myself, I am a humble servant and sincere devotee of the very highest truth of Sant for many years now, who has given his life in the service of the true Lord, as well as to the Holy Masters of today. As such, I do not seek any recognition, praise or reward, as I only act with the authority and by request of the Supreme Lord itself, as well as that of the Holy Masters of today, to simply tell the full truth of God, life and creation to those who wish to know. I thus live in the Supreme Lord's will and simply offer my humble demonstration, guidance and true knowledge to all who seek the same, especially in the modern age. Now, as a friend and co-traveller on this noble path to God realization, I only ask that you put aside my human form and instead listen to and take heed of the loving truth that the Supreme Lord has to offer you via this humble form, who has himself been transformed by the Holy Masters of today. Thus I represent the proof that truly anyone can rise above their given karmic role to become truly noble once again by the true Lord's grace, if only they earnestly seek it, no matter how wretched or difficult their life may have been. For the true Lord of all is not only compassionate for the suffering humanity who seeks the truth, but also truly merciful. Therefore, everything I shall share with you today is a gift of wisdom from the true Lord itself, for the sincere seekers of high spiritual truth, which I have been asked to share with you. But please do not attempt to praise or glorify this humble servant in any way, for you too are all divine beings undergoing a human experience in this lifetime, though you may not yet be aware of this. Therefore, what is given to me freely by the true Lord, I give to you the same. In return, I only ask that you open your heart and mind to the holy truth that the Supreme Lord and the Holy Masters have to offer you. There is no need to give up your current faith or belief, only to listen, explore and see for yourself the further truths that are hidden within you. For true spirituality is not a religion or a scripture. It is the birthright of every human being here on earth, no matter what their current background, belief or circumstance. Now for those who need further assistance, they may privately contact the main speaker directly via email or video by first subscribing to our valuable information service at ISTAuk.com and then requesting the direct contact details of our main speaker from our administrators. He will endeavour to answer all spiritual questions within 48 hours of receipt, but please be patient if he should take a little longer due to his busy schedule and the sheer number of inquiries. So, before we start today's question and answer session, I would like to do a short introduction. Well, not a short one actually. I think it's going to be more of a satsang today because of the sheer number of inquiries I have, which I think the mainstream public should hear the answer to rather than individual replies. So The theme today is who is a true guru and who is a true disciple. But before I begin this talk, I would first like to answer a significant amount of inquiries that I have received regarding where the world is currently heading in this transition phase from Kal Yuga to Dwapar Yuga. Many people around the world are feeling very concerned and insecure about all areas of life today, especially regarding the many conspiracy theories currently circulating in social media and the press, even regarding pseudo-spiritual or mindfulness promoters coming forward with all sorts of ideas about this. Also of concern is the underlying current of dark information coming forward by certain interest groups that portray a very disturbing view. Well, I have to say to you that their concerns are justified. There is indeed a permanent change coming to us all from the year 2021 onwards regarding work, politics, civil unrest, mental health, freedom, and natural disasters, plus technology changes. There is a gradual shift in natural consciousness happening in all areas of the planet as part of a natural planetary cycle that will affect all life on Earth. From the human perspective, however, there will be great unsettlement in personal well-being, harassments, civil unrest, and mental health, where even the World Health Organization will declare a mental health pandemic in 2027. Further to all this, the amount of whistleblowers that will come forward during this decade to expose the level of government and corporate corruption and their true control over ordinary population will increase, which many will find very disturbing. Though the whistleblowers will be promptly hushed down by the governing powers to keep the ordinary public ignorant and thus calm. Some of the key revelations, which has already started, will include the fears centering around artificial intelligence, or AI, as it is termed, that will take over many automotive, administrative, and advisory roles in the job market. At the same time, more sophisticated crimes or scams using AI will rapidly increase, which will be difficult to control and will affect a great many people. Alongside this is a more concerning rise in misinformation campaigns, from politics to health and from science to philosophy. One who is not sufficiently schooled in these subject matters will be easily influenced by this misinformation campaign led by commercial interest, shadow government organizations, and fame or glory-seeking members of the public. Even the press, Google, television news and social media is involved in this deliberate misinformation and trouble-stirring campaign for a certain end, inciting public fear, then the corresponding controls. So these are the main concerns that will affect this decade. Now, even more disturbing is the fact that, despite what one may think, that the elected government of the day are running the country at all levels, and that the mainstream press, social media, Google, etc. are free and unbiased, that is not the case. Firstly, elected politicians come and go with their superficial policies. They generally do not help ordinary people. That's why hardly anything changes for the better, no matter what government comes in. Also, political government is simply not transparent, as it is subject to the dictates of the economic and political demands of the powerful elite. In addition to this, what is less known to the mainstream public is the fact that there exists since 1945 in most Western countries an elite shadow government who actually run the show behind the scenes of each country. They even have their own military recruits, military force, spy network, and people of power in important positions who actually pull the strings. while letting the public and elected politicians believe that they are in control through persuasive advice. Indeed, their mission is quite sinister, and their methods of exercising control over the elected governments and the ordinary public are wholly immoral and unethical. They exist to serve self-interests and to maintain their seat of power, no matter what climatic or political changes occur in their country. Furthermore, they held significant sway in all Western democracies. They are all linked with each other and work covertly to restrict general progress in all areas of life that would provide power and control to the ordinary people. For example, anti-gravity, fuel-less engines and vehicles have existed since 1954, but are not released to mainstream industry. Free and wireless energy from the ionosphere has been harnessed since the mid-1930s, but has not been made available to the mainstream public for commercial greed reasons. Many cures for common diseases have not been released to the mass public for similar reasons of population control and greed. Advanced technologies to make our lives easier and to free us from having to work so hard to maintain our lives have been suppressed, so that people are forced into a vicious cycle of hard work, high bills, and lack of physical and mental energy to protest about the increasing demands and restrictions imposed by government to keep the mainstream public in its place. These advanced facilities are only available to the forces of the shadow government and the supporting big corporations, so that they can travel, cure and power themselves independently from mainstream fuel, medicine and travel companies, etc. On top of this, civil disputes and unrests is kept simmering, so that the perspective of the mainstream population of the world are kept in fear, led by political agendas and ideas to keep them at loggerheads with each other, then attacking the government rather than attacking the government for the truth. There is a vast network indeed of misinformation campaigns, civil unrest groups and fear-mongering, including the inciting of wars for the arms industry to profit by, the increase of specific pathogens to keep Big Pharma going, and the poor nutritional value of the food industry to keep people wanting more junk food for commercial profit, along with Big Brother draconian rules designed to keep the masses in their place, whilst they are being exploited in every way for the gain of the elite. It is even withheld that we have direct contact with several alien species who visit our world interdimensionally, or who actually live in this world as remnants from previous lost civilizations or visitations, who live underground due to the overwhelming population difference and aggressiveness of human beings, who are far less advanced and less peaceful than they are. These aliens have offered to clean up our planet, provide useful technologies to feed the starving populations, and to even provide day-to-day useful tech to make our lives easier. But that has all been blocked by the covert shadow governments who communicate with them, pretending to represent the mainstream population of our Earth. One famous group associated with the covert activities of the shadow governments of the world is the Bilderberg Group, among many others. Now all this will eventually be exposed by whistleblowers who feel a moral need to move away from these covert organizations and to expose the truth to the public, though at great risk to their lives, for many have already been killed or discredited for doing so in the past, and little is known about them through systematic erasure and cleansing of their existence following their initial public disclosure. They are never heard of again, and the mainstream public are too preoccupied by paying their bills and managing their poor health to bother about these important disclosures that detail exactly why they are still living in hardship and poor health in the 21st century. Now I hope that this short confirmation of what is going on behind the scenes and why life seems to be getting harder and darker for most people at this time is sufficiently explained. I must stress at this point, however, that I'm not revealing all this to create another protest group or discord, etc., but simply to address the rightful concerns of those affected by all this. You see, right knowledge allows you to become more empowered to deal with these issues, better so that one can focus more attentively to their spiritual practice rather than stressing about life. On this point, I hope to have succeeded somewhat. Now, going back to the main theme of today, let's continue. There have been many inquiries lately surrounding the query of who or what is an actual guru, since there are so many promoters out there calling themselves revered teacher, holy father, rabbi, kohen, imam, sheikh, monk, swami, sant, baba, mata, yogi, sadhu, maharishi, guru, and so on. The list is almost endless. It could be very confusing for the average inquirer to distinguish between these and a perfect Sant Satguru or holy master of the highest order. For a start, what do all these titles actually mean in reality? Then also, what does it actually mean to be a true disciple as opposed to a mere follower, believer or seeker, etc.? For most inquirers or seekers today, this is all very confusing. Hence the number of emails I regularly receive asking about this, and specifically about this one or that one, or this path or that path, etc., wanting me to comment about them. Furthermore, another question frequently asked is this: what is the actual relationship between the Supreme Lord itself, that we all hear about, the souls of creation, and the Satguru, perfect saint or noble mystic, who mercifully guides the souls as disciples back to their true origin or true home? To answer this question properly, we need to understand some important background. So here it is in brief. In the very beginning of creation, there was a state of perfect nothingness, of non-being or non-manifestation, termed truth with a capital T, or the Holy Truth, as it is now known today. But this nothingness was not like the nothing we comprehend today. It was something, a latent existence. Now this something, which is a state of existence far beyond the limits of human understanding, we can call isness or truth, because of its nature. Now this something, being all-powerful, unlimited, and possessing every possibility within it, with an ability to create absolutely from nothingness, via its own will, at some point then, first came into being as the Supreme Lord, or true God, as it is known today. Indeed, this act was the first ever manifestation of anything that we could conceive or recognize as an existence. Now this manifestation of the Lord came to being from nothingness, with its innate framework for divine expression, which we call creation potential. Then creation itself would naturally follow. But to allow for creation, then this Supreme Lord immediately becomes supremely conscious. As a result of this, becoming conscious, self-aware in a most perfect way, which we term the original being, or Supreme Lord, or creative power, etc., also known as Supreme Consciousness in Sant, and termed oneness in religion. From there, though, through a series of devolution steps, for brevity, I shall not go into but for brevity, which I shall not go into today, this Supreme Lord or consciousness, with its innate ability to create, created a state of self-aware oneness that we call Satgurus in Sant and Sikhism, or the highest kingdom of God in Christianity, Tawhid in Islam, Moksha in Hinduism, Buddhahood in Buddhism, and so on, headed by a Lord termed Satgurus in Sant, Almighty God in Christianity, the Buddha in Buddhism, Hak Kadim in Islam, Akal Purush in Sikhism, and Param Atma in Hinduism, etc., which is the fundamental structure that we can begin to comprehend. Yet despite these names and identities, this is not an actual place of any sort, but is a state of all-powerful self-aware primal consciousness, or higher state of consciousness. So although most religions, and even Santmat, often describes this state of existence as a place with a central being, around which souls are blissful worship, that is not actually the case. It's just a way of explaining the incomprehensible to the limited human minds. Now, regardless of terminology, from this point on, a creation as we understand it today took place, based upon the framework of the newly manifested Supreme Lord or Creator. But for creation to continue within the framework of oneness, this oneness or Supreme Lord had to divide itself into the many that we call souls. And as a result of this separation from oneness, these souls immediately gained an identity separate from the Lord and each other. Hence, the first stage of duality was born, where each soul became a unique viewpoint manifestation of the Supreme Lord, simply for the sake of viewing the coming creation from slightly different angles, infinite numbers of them in fact, allowing for infinite viewpoints of its glory. Now at this point, all the souls were still aware of their Creator, and so could enjoy this glory from both the position of oneness and the position of individuality at the same time, which is a state of existence at the level of the Supreme Lord. But his glory wasn't to end there. Following further stages of devolution, countless souls would become veiled from the blissful state of oneness and the many, to become individual creative powers of their own, isolated from the Lord and each other. From this point on, each soul would exist in a state of true individuality, in which its totality of awareness would be clipped or veiled, allowing for individual awareness alone, surrounded by a corresponding state of existence termed Parbrahm in Sant and Sikhism, or realm of the soul in Christianity, Atma Moksha in Hinduism, Parinirvana in Buddhism, and Ruhi in Islam, etc. At this point initially, the soul still remembers its full glory, but doesn't have access to it, since the soul is now heading downward, so to speak, towards a full adventure ride. Now whether the soul embarks upon this downward daring adventure voluntarily or by design is just a matter of perspective that I shall not go into today. But I can say this: if we had true free will as an individual soul, then we would not have chosen to play the character that we are playing in creation today. We would not have chosen to become blindly separated from our beloved Lord. We would have remained in blissful union with our Creator. Instead, having reached this point in the glory of creation, the Supreme Lord of the souls, in wanting to express its full glory to the ultimate degree, embedded each soul or viewpoint with a desire for drama and adventure, which the soul would then manifest as individuality at first, and then as illusory mindfulness or character later. Now fortunately, the mindfulness theme is not permanent. It is just a veil of illusion placed upon the soul simply for the soul to have an illusory experience of reality, termed mindful individualism, that by its very nature would become manifested in Parbrahm, in the bottom half of Parbrahm, as a concept yet to be realized. Now this veil of illusion, by its very nature, would become manifested as the newly recognized mindfulness tool, within the framework of space-time existence, that we all know of in science, though it is spiritually termed the causal realm of Maya or illusion. Now this causal realm is unlike any other realm of creation or consciousness above it, in that it is a crude limitation or imitation of such kind itself, peppered with additional yet illusory wonders that I shall describe only briefly, since full details of the creation process is well documented in the ISTAuk publication titled The Sacred Truth of God, Life and Creation, available from our local centres, Amazon online, or via our website. Incidentally, at the top level of the causal realm, known as Trikuti in Sant, which refers to the three aspects of created time and space, termed past, present and future, also known as Brahma's creative power, Vishnu's sustaining power, and Shiva's destruction power, where the tool of mindfulness actually originates. There is no fixed form, gender, race or creed, nor any other form of actual being, etc., which is similar in fact to the true soul region of such kind, where only the potential of all possibilities exists, unmanifested. Yet in the realm of universal mindfulness, known as Kal, all possible illusions are actually activated to create the individual mindsets or characters needed for the great play of Kal to be played out, as scripted in the universal script for the current creation adventure. And this is powered through the life-giving power of the visiting souls, who empower each character that they inhabit. Now, this illusory design, from the causal realm downwards, is simply for the character of the newly created mindfulness individual that we all recognize as our thinking self to become active in, as a participant in this illusory and imperfect creation. Indeed, each participant's mindful activity in physical creation, for example, is simply played out by each participant first receiving a creative idea or an analysis idea that's generated from the causal realm script, especially for the character they are playing, that's then filtered down to their physical brain in timeline successions to be expressed as either mindful chatter for analysis or as a sensation via the five senses for an external experience and reaction, much like virtual reality, one could say. Indeed, the whole process is so automatic for every second of every day, without interruption, that it seems like a natural and individually willed process. However, the exact form and activity of any individual travelling through the physical realm as a character in the great play of illusory creation is appropriately created at the time of their conception from their predetermined script and accompanying story, which in turn is governed by the soul's given viewpoint or marking in lower Parbrahm to form all the activities and experiences of individual action, drama and adventure that is scripted for that character in creation, as an apparently self-willed behavior, much like being on a holographic stage with a story to unfold in today's world of artificial reality. just like a puppet who dances in accordance with the puppeteer pulling the strings, where the puppet thinks he or she is dancing of their own free will. Such is the condition of human beings on earth, subject to their given destiny and character. Yet in true reality, this illusory character and its generated actions and experiences is, by its very nature, completely unreal and inert. It is only due to the presence of the soul that actual life comes into that individuated character of the otherwise lifeless universal or puppeteer mind, to awaken it, just like a battery awakens a device. Moreover, as a result of this remarkable setup, all apparent experiences and adventures themselves are simply generated by the creative power of the universal or collective mind itself, at first, and then appropriately sent to the individual minds of current creation for expression. This universal or collective mind tool is known as Kal in Sant, Brahma in religion, and space-time in science, etc. You see, in the very beginning of the manifestation of illusory creation, all the individuated minds that were to be activated for the great play of this illusory creation to start and continue were generated from the one universal mind of the imperfect Lord, termed Kal, ready to be picked by the influx of visiting souls, countless trillions of them in fact, to be played out as individual characters, created at the start of each cycle of illusory creation, from the causal realm down to the physical realm. Incidentally, each cycle of creation and destruction itself lasts around 3.1 trillion Earth years in total, before pralaya, meaning its dissolution or ending, comes about. Indeed, it is only during this active cycle that all the participants' dramas and adventures, such as in the current creation that we're experiencing today, which we are now part of, is played out. To examine this further regarding the individual behavior of each participant and how they relate to each other, let me briefly tell you now how this works. Individual thoughts are projected from the causal realm of universal or collective mind into each participant's or character's mind as a personal desire for expression, in accordance with a script for each individual's role in karmic creation, which is then either adopted as a personal thought for mental conditioning or mulling over, or passed on to the senses to be externalized by projection to create the experience of an external object or event, which the same senses then pick up immediately, while the mind too immediately recognizes it as an experience. Indeed, the whole process is so instantaneous and so natural that the character of the individual experiencer convincingly feels that all this is real, and that they are responsible for their consequent reaction or behavior. It is truly an art of grand deception that the great play of illusion plays out through each individual participant that follows the universal script of illusory creation, so that the creation story can unfold. In this way, each participant is made to believe that it is their own choice or will that is being expressed, and that the glory of their life and of their creation itself is made up of real background scenery, timed events, so-called heroes and villains, and all those characters in between. It is indeed a perfect deception of drama and adventure, just like being in a movie. So now, on an individual level, regarding one's personal deeds or actions while in the human body, this is how it works. A predetermined thought is first generated in the character the character's mind as a desire to be had, and then the senses generate and pick up the desire as an experience seemingly external to the individual mind to make it seem real. Indeed, so compelling is this process that no one really asks, from where did this particular thought or desire come from? And why do the senses only work in the body when I am so-called awake? Surely, if everything I sense is absolutely real at all times, then it should always be available to me, whether I'm so-called awake or not. Just like I'm always aware of my personal existence, whether awake or dreaming. In dreams, you see, only the external environment changes, but one still recognizes who they are personally. So then one may rightly ask, which state is actually real, if any, being so-called awake or being so-called asleep? Indeed, this thought about the nature of reality has puzzled the intelligentsia since antiquity. Why? Because of the search for absolute reality, the particular search that the great thinkers recognize. So, just going to have a short drink. So, this is the condition of our current situation here on earth. Now, furthermore, as this character is simply created for an alternative experience to the perfect state of the soul, it is by its very nature imperfect. However, in reality, it is neither good nor bad from the Lord's point of view. Yet it is both good and bad from its own point of view, since it is programmed to see everything in illusory creation from the viewpoint of duality or pairs of opposites, especially defined as good and bad, right and wrong, pleasure and pain, etc., by the unknowing or unenlightened participants. In addition to all this, since each character of the divine play has to undergo an illusory experience and an illusory adventure in the playground of illusory creation for around 3 million Earth years or so, and thus experience countless dramas, all placed within the framework of a story running in linear time, a universal story that unfolds life after life like chapters in a book towards a predetermined outcome, then this is only possible by being confined to predetermined rules, termed karma, as each mindful character, being illusory, has no will of its own to act independently, much like a robot, one can say, although quite remarkably, in the human sense, it thinks it does, through the prescripted concept of choice-making, disguised as free will, which is the cleverest design of the whole illusion. Therefore, the character in this play of the divine can only follow the script of its given adventure, termed karma, by inherently acting according to its given characteristics, termed sanskars. However, all this is kept secret from the characters themselves, till their individual time is up to be rescued. Then all characters can simply do is go along with their individual script, which is actually itself embedded within the universal script of illusory creation, much like an actor does in a movie story, even immersing themselves in it and identifying with it as totally real, till the time comes for them to be awakened and thus rescued. Only then can they truly know the scale of this design. Indeed, it is a remarkable design when looking at it from the rescued point of view. Even more appreciated is a realization of the fact that our reunion with the real truth and the true Lord would become utterly impossible if it were not for the merciful rescue plan arranged by our Creator, who sent us here as individual souls. Now, the first sign of this rescue or awakening, though amazing in its own right, is still firmly rooted in the script of karmic illusion, which we recognize as certain religions, philosophy and science, till a further awakening allows us to realize the difference between true spirituality and these others. Therefore, this early awakening does not involve a true living guru of any sort, but instead relies upon scriptural doctrine and community belonging, headed by a teacher of sorts. But these communities of faith or belief are not based upon personal knowing or experience, but more on simple belief, without actual proof. You see, by this point, the undemanding state of the weary mind simply wants to improve its lot in life, and so doesn't want to necessarily know the actual truth of everything. Hence, it initially accepts the promised teachings of religion, philosophy and science as a comfort for the emotions and even the lower intellect, without thinking too much about it. But for those who are more elevated in their thinking, they would be introduced to higher concepts, such as the higher paths of learning, deeper meanings, and the more intellectually spiritual explanations of their lot in life. Therefore, they would more earnestly pursue the more advanced explanations of higher spirituality, including pious or virtuous living, the karmic law of heaven and hell that separates the good from the bad, and to a certain extent the divinity of the soul-mind complex. In this state, however, one is still firmly rooted in cultural religion or philosophy within the illusory creation that imitates the high truth of the soul for the mind's consumption, yet doesn't actually liberate anyone from the illusory creation itself. The best one can achieve in this belief system is the karmic heavens and hells, is the karmic heavens for a state of rest and peace from worldly dramas, termed samadhi in Sant and Sikhism, Brahmaloka in Hinduism, heaven in Christianity, Jannah in Islam, and Nirvana in Buddhism, etc., where the so-called saved one is identified as a jiva in Sant and Hinduism and Sikhism, a nath in Islam, an arhat in Buddhism, a heavenly spirit in Christianity, and so on, all of which, however, are still governed by the ego or mind characteristic of that individual in one form or another, and so is still not actually real or eternal. For those fortunate few who are marked for true salvation in this lifetime, they will become quietly dissatisfied with the lower forms of worship and teachings found in cultural belief systems for mindful philosophies, and so will naturally feel that something important is missing there. Now for them, out of merciful intervention in their script, the Supreme Lord introduces them to a true holy master, perfect saint or noble mystic, who has the authority to rescue marked souls from the illusory creation and its mindfulness that they are still trapped in. Hence the introduction of the concept of a true guru and a true disciple that we shall look into next. But to simplify matters, we first need to know who or what is a true guru or enlightened one, also known as a holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, in comparison to one whom we initially call a guru in life. So let's look into this now. to simplify matters, we need to know what is the definition of a guru. A guru simply means one who takes you from darkness to light. Now, normally, in the beginning of our journey through life, our education teacher, our wise elders, or those who think are elevated individuals, we consider them as a form of guru, which is perfectly fine at the time. But then, as time passes, our maturity develops. We grow then to realize that there must be something more than this, to learn about life itself. For some, this means a search for even greater gurus to serve their needs, till, if one is truly fortunate, they come across a true spiritual guru in life. Now at this point, it must be made known that a true spiritual guru itself, also known as a holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, etc., is in fact not the body, nor the mind of any physical being. The true Satguru form, is actually the creative power of creation, known as the Shabad in Eastern philosophy, or divine word in Western philosophy, who manifests on earth in human form from time to time, out of compassion for seeking humanity, where up to 9 manifestations can coexist at any one time, but usually no more than 5, and most commonly only 1 to 3 such manifestations on earth. Quite remarkably though, the Shabad or divine melody that I had just mentioned is actually present in all human beings, though is more commonly known as the soul or true self, which contains all the divine attributes of the Supreme Lord itself, who is again more commonly known as our Creator, Lord, or God. But these divine attributes are so far unawakened till the appropriate time comes for each individual to become a true disciple or spiritually enlightened. Now for most spiritual seekers, since they have not yet connected with the all-knowing Shabad or true Guru within themselves, they start calling a spiritual teacher of some sort outside of themselves a Guru or similar, out of simple respect. But then, as they evolve in their truth-seeking inquiry, they begin to recognize a difference between certain types of guru, culminating in the deeper recognition of a true or Satguru. Now this is explained in several holy scriptures. For example, in the holy book of the Sikhs, where the individual and the virtues of a true guru are more thoroughly defined, it is clearly explained via the phrase Shabad Guru Surat Dun Chela, which simply means the creative power is the Guru, and the Surat, a soul attuned to that creative power, is the disciple. In other words, the actual truth is that the physical body and mind that we so identify with right now does not have the strength to become a true disciple, nor does it have the capacity to become a true guru. They can only follow such a one within their mindfulness framework of a human being, who enjoys the benefit of a more wholesome association with the high truth, even without direct experience of such. So, to start with, as our condition is just physically aware, then a physical guru has to be there to initially teach a physical body or mind in order to introduce it to the concept. That's why whosoever teaches us in the physical form, we may call them a guru or revered teacher out of respect. For example, when we want to learn a trade, we may say, I will treat you as my teacher or guru according to one's cultural background. So please teach me. In olden times, for the one who taught us, we would give them the status of a revered teacher or guru. Indeed, when children used to go to school, They used to bow down before the teacher and respect them, in simple terms, as their revered teacher or guru, although nowadays this does not happen. Now in Eastern culture, the literal meaning of guru is, as I said before, one who brings you from darkness into light, whether spiritually or otherwise, incidentally. But here we're going to look at this form of spiritual perspective from the spiritual perspective only, not the physical or the mental. So going back to the words of the Sikh masters, they say that the body and mind does not have the strength to be a true disciple nor a true guru, as the body and mind are simply made according to one's karmas, with no power or free will of its own. That's why the body can never be perfect, and the mind can never be complete in its wisdom. But since human beings are in that physical condition right now, then the start of their spiritual seeking has to be made via the body, which we can term a disciple loosely so. Meanwhile, for a noble saint or an enlightened one who has more spiritual experience than us, then we can accept them as our revered teacher or guru. But that is just the start of it all. You see, when someone goes to a wise person with sincerity, then that wise person tries to teach them some knowledge, but cannot teach them true wisdom, for wisdom is only gained through actual experience. Indeed, as long as you are only in the form of the physical body, you will be trapped by your karmas or fated events during your life here on earth. Alongside this, your capacity to learn will be restricted by your sanskars or level of comprehension. Now, between these two inherited circumstances, your ability to achieve true spiritual salvation in this lifetime or the next is predetermined. But for those listening to this talk or satsang today, among other similar teachings, they are indeed fortunate, because they have been given the opportunity to eventually rise above their physical bondage through a pull from within, and to enter the spiritual realms of existence, ultimately culminating in recognition of their true self and Lord through spiritual practice. Now, the eternal question that human beings have asked throughout the ages is this: who am I really? From the very beginning, in fact, we humans, blessed with reasoning and an inquiring mind, have been searching for this answer in countless ways, which has taken many forms, historically and even today, whether through animism, religion, philosophy or science, etc. But most have failed to truly get it, because we will only get the true answer from within us, not from anywhere outside of us. This is because we are actually a spiritual being undergoing a human experience, and until we actually realize this, we will continue to identify ourselves with just our body or mind. Therefore, we can only get our true salvation from deep within us, from our spiritual self, in fact. Now, Western philosophies have said, I think, therefore I am. But from where does this thought come? It comes from the mind, of course. Yet do we think that our entire existence is limited to just our mind? Sadly for most, this is where their journey ends, unless we come across a teacher or guru who tells us more. Such a teacher or guru who talks about our state of existence beyond the body and mind of our temporary character, we call them a holy master, perfect saint or noble mystic, simply to distinguish them from a mere teacher or guru of the body and mind. In fact, no religion is needed, no doctrine or ritual is needed, no priests or holy teachers are needed, and no following is needed to find the truth within you. At first, though, we do think that we are just a mind, until something else known as the soul is awakened within us, through divine grace, at the allotted time. But then, to fully realize this awakening, we have to utilize our surit, meaning our attention or focus of consciousness, to continue the awakening. For when our surit is directed towards becoming a seeker of the highest truth, then it is that surit of the soul that has the ability or strength to become a true disciple, not the body or the mind. The body and mind simply doesn't have the capacity or comprehension to do so. They can only be followers of the surit's or soul's lead. But to realize this difference, we have to have our surit or higher consciousness awakened. Then it is the surit that has the capacity to become the disciple, not the body or the mind. And when the awakened surit catches the dun from within ourselves, it realizes the Shabad Guru, not the physical Guru. The physical Guru can only teach the body and mind to satisfy their curiosity. As Hazur Charan Singh used to say of Byas, bricks and stones cannot talk to us, and the language of animals we do not understand. That is why, until someone like us does not come among us to teach us in our language, then these things are beyond our understanding. That's why a human guru must be like us. They must live just like us and follow karmic law just like us. If they didn't, then we cannot relate to them, for they come as an example of noble living in the human form, to show us how it can be done, even when facing difficulties due to the inherited karma of the body and mind that they take on just to come into this world. Yet they do not come to be worshipped, nor to have people devoted to them physically, or have people bow before them. They come only to guide us towards our own ultimate truth. Though unlike the popular myth of many belief systems even today, they do not come for everyone, only for those marked for salvation in their lifetime. Therefore, they are not mere teachers to fill us with all the knowledge of life and existence, simply to satisfy our intellect. There are plenty of others for that. Only a certain knowledge is needed, just enough to pique our interest, to find the rest for ourselves. This rest that we just spoke about comes from within us in the form of personal experience and wisdom, not hearsay. For example, when we send our children to school, the teacher does not fill them with all the knowledge of the world. That would be overwhelming. But by teaching them the basics of knowledge, the teacher polishes the child's intellect, and from there the child continues to learn independently. Similarly, just as a jeweler knows the value of different stones, they choose a certain stone, and after polishing that stone, the stone starts to shine. Then it has value. So when we first encounter the company of the saints as a physical being, the spirituality which is already within us from birth, which is not put there by anyone from outside, is polished, while the body itself is taught to treat itself with respect due to it housing the precious mind-soul complex, through eating the right foods, avoiding harm, and keeping itself in good condition, etc. You see, through the physical body, the truth of our mind is at first brought out through the awakening of our soul. Then, when we use this awakening to honestly look at our mind, we see its impurities, its defects, its different forms, etc. But the saints remind us that the mind was not always this way. Originally, it was light itself, though not perfect in comparison to the soul, which has been dulled by its condition of ignorance and karmas that our mind has collected by circumstances along its way. Therefore, when it is polished, it becomes noble again and starts to shine, as it once did. Such a one is an example to humanity of the nobility of the human form. Then from there, untroubled by the wayward mind, the soul is further empowered, till it becomes free of the mind and body entirely. All this and more is offered by the true saints. End of quote. And it all happens in stages. You see, when we come into this world, our past deeds and desires were such that the mind's condition became dulled. Hence the saints all say, O mind, you are now utterly filthy and blind. What more can I say? Wake up and realize your true worth. Meanwhile, the true saints also awaken the higher spirituality of the soul within us, so that we can recognize that the soul is the true disciple and not the body or mind. They further say, how far can the body itself go? What can it achieve on its own? Its scope is very limited. But when that same body engages in holy meditation via the mind, because the surat of the soul is awakened by the Lord, then that surat has the strength to become the disciple and takes the mind and body along with it, initially up to the Trikuti, or top of the causal realm. So it's the surat that is the real disciple, and catching hold of the Shabad Dun, or inner sound, it realizes the Shabad form or spiritual form of the physical Guru. That's why the Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikh faith says, Shabad Guru Surat Dun Chela. It must also be remembered that when holy masters refer to the true Lord, they mean the Lord of the soul, not the karmic Lord of the mind. But how can we then recognize a Satguru of the highest truth? Well, at the level of an average human being, one cannot. And the journey we take from the lower level of human awareness to that of higher realization involves several levels of awakening, often traversing many levels of Guru over several lifetimes, before one can recognize a true Satguru spiritually, which, incidentally, is also the Supreme Lord's form within us, termed Shabad. Meanwhile, the external form of the Guru we seek may be born into the nobility of a spiritual family, or can be the product of transformation from simply anyone into a saint, by the Supreme Lord's grace. For there is no limit to the glory of the Supreme Lord, so that none can boast of their prior good conduct, and none can say that their bad or heavy karmas will stop them from becoming worthy of sainthood. Yet, as we have established, the real Guru is not the body. The real Guru is the Shabad, which is the creative power and glory of the Supreme Lord, manifested as resonating wisdom, that is at first heard as a sound within the human body. But since we have not yet reached that Shabad Dun, then from wherever we start in life concerning our spiritual journey, we start calling them, or that book even, a Guru. But we cannot yet distinguish between a knowledgeable one and a one of true wisdom. But if, as mentioned earlier, the physical body itself does not have the ability to become a true disciple, nor does it have the ability to become a true Guru, then how is this enlightenment actually achieved while in the body? To start with, as our condition is initially just physical, we need a physical body like us to teach us. That's why that's why, for example, we need to have a master or guru to teach us a skilled trade. In the same way, we need a master to teach us a spiritual trade, which we call spirituality. You see, for example then, if we want to learn a trade from someone skilled in that trade, we may say, I see you as a master or guru of this skill, so please teach me. Now in olden times, we would also give the status of a master or guru to our teachers. Indeed, when children used to go to school in the East, they used to bow before their teachers and respect them in such a manner as a guru. So although nowadays this does not happen, previously the teacher used to be treated as a sort of guru, because he or she imparted knowledge but not wisdom. Then later on, when greater knowledge was sought and gained in life from one teacher or another or information source, till one was filled to the brim with mere knowledge, then one would say, I had many gurus or masters up until now, but I do not have wisdom. Following this, then one of two scenarios would take place. The first would be satisfaction with their knowledge and acceptance of their limitation, and so they seek no more. While the other scenario, which is more rare, would be to seek ultimate wisdom, not mere knowledge, from a truly competent one, which we can term a true guru or true master. But when you really look into this, what use is there in having all the knowledge of the three karmic worlds of lower creation if you are still trapped in torment and illusion? How can such knowledge save you from this world, from this mortal world of endless struggles, intermingled with temporary pleasures that merely distract you temporarily from the misery or struggle of desire and strife? Only by having your consciousness raised to beyond mind and maya can lasting joy be yours. All the tricks of life to keep you chasing the next moment of pleasure or comfort between your pains are not the answer one should seek, for such pleasures do not solve your human dilemma. Yet, as the Holy Masters tell us, you came here for an adventure into another world that is markedly different, turned drama, to your own true home of peace and bliss. Therefore, there is a certain mystery to unfold as one journeys back to their high truth, once they are marked to do so by the Supreme Lord. It is this unfolding mystery that provides the basis of the adventure that we came for, which involves being rescued from the nightmare dramas of karmic existence that we initially wanted to experience. That is why all the Holy Masters have termed this karmic existence of separation from the holy truth of our true identity and home as an experience of drama and an adventure to be rescued from when we are truly done with it all, for it no longer appeals to us as it once did. Indeed, for those seriously interested in this subject, who also take the time to attentively listen to such high teachings, one could rightly say that they are done with their worldly existence, and thereby seek answers to their human dilemma, though at various levels of understanding at first. But looking at the spiritual journey of a true spiritual aspirant more closely, this is marked by gradual progression, not hasty enlightenment, exactly for the reason of having an adventure via ever-enlightening experiences. Till then, all one can do is think and act their very best, according to their nature or current sanskars mentioned earlier. But then, if by their good fortune they come across a wise individual who has crossed the boundaries of ignorance and limitation that they are currently trapped in, and through such an encounter they are awakened into higher thinking, then such an individual can also instruct them on how to do the same, or how to transform just like them. Thus, this individual can become your guru or wise one for now. If you are ready or have an affinity with them, then this will take place naturally. But in the beginning, one must be patient with their spiritual progress, as their body and mind would not respond well to shock enlightenment. Therefore, one's inherent habits and traits will still be there. However, instead of merely suffering blindly the karmic consequences of one's thoughts and deeds, one now has a certain knowledge to make better sense of it all. From that point on, indeed, one starts to learn beneficial lessons from the consequences of one's habits, instead of being resentful, through applying the healing ointment of the knowledge that they have learned from the one they have faith in, to make subtle yet highly beneficial changes day by day, week by week, and so on, at the pace they can handle, which builds up over time to transform them into a noble human being. Indeed, each failure or misfortune in one's life now leads to a lesson learned that, in the absence of higher wisdom, causes one to finally change their ways. Thus, bit by bit, one becomes transformed for the better, all while doing what they think is best at each time, given their state of comprehension, biological needs, strength, and discipline at the time. So, the lessons learned from your own suffering, bathed by the wisdom of the Guru or wise one that you have faith in, makes you progress at the pace you can handle in this lifetime, though many continue to the next lifetime for many. There's simply no other way that one can safely transform themselves into the nobility required for spiritual enlightenment. Whether one is an initiate of a holy master or not, the process is the same, though the level of ultimate attainment will be different, of course. But once a certain amount of progress or transformation of character or mind is attained, whether in this lifetime or the next, then true spiritual practice becomes enjoyable, even becoming the default go-to habit of the weary mind, rather than causing a negative retaliation. From this point on, ever higher stages of mindfulness wisdom are obtained, until a stage is reached where the soul alone reigns supreme, as the mind merges into the higher wisdom of its true origin self turned to universal mind, leaving the soul free to become one with its own creator, and thus bathed in the bliss of absolute truth and glory, termed divine love and truth by the Holy Masters. Now let's come back to the lines of the Gurbani in Sant, where it says that the body does not have the strength to be a true guru or a true disciple, as the body is made from gross matter in accordance with the karmas of that body, which exists initially in an animal-like state, as the human animal of evolutionary science and philosophy. That's why the body can never be perfect, and the mind can never be wise. But a start has to be made with the body. So initially, a learned person, a great teacher, or even a saint, prophet, or mystic, etc., who has more wisdom than us, can be accepted as our guru. Yet that's just a start. When someone initially goes to such a wise person and gets knowledge from them, then the journey just begins. But since our real self is not the body nor the mind, it is the eternal soul within that body that also empowers the mind, that will become awakened by a higher power. Then as long as you are in the realm of the body alone, without high awareness, you will remain trapped by your karmas or fate. Life after life, in fact. However, for those of you who have been initiated by a holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic in this lifetime, then you have been given a special opportunity to rise above your physical limitation and to enter the spiritual realms so as to recognize your true self. But holy initiation is just the start. It doesn't guarantee that you will not have to return to worldly existence of difficulty and struggle in the next life or the life thereafter if you don't take advantage of this great blessing by seriously doing your spiritual practice once initiated. But for those who actually do their spiritual practice seriously, the now inward directed surat or focus of attention of their consciousness will eventually catch the Shabadun or divine melody of the true Lord, upon which the surat will finally realize that the Shabad Guru is the real Guru, not the limited physical Guru. From this point on, one will realize that the physical Guru can only teach or empower the physical bodies of creation by explaining to them the simple rules of adjusting oneself to one's given karma and sanskars, termed pious living, or living in the Lord's will for them, so as to put aside worldly concerns, while at the same time practicing the withdrawal of one's scattered attention from outside of oneself back to within oneself, in order to attain true enlightenment. The physical Guru, you see, will not make this happen just by its physical presence. That's why holy masters come into our life as physically normal human beings, to show us by example that the higher truth of our being, termed soul, is beyond the reach of our simple body and mind, and so no amount of mere thinking about it, chasing the enlightened ones physically, or simply debating, listening, reading about it all, will allow for true spiritual progress, other than performing one's inner spiritual practice, as demonstrated by the Holy Master of the day. There is simply no other way in the modern age to attain true enlightenment of peace and bliss that we may seek. Incidentally, another significant reason for having a physical master in this lifetime as one's guru is to be able to recognize them when one enters the spiritual region of the astral realm. This is because the astral realm is populated by all sorts of beings, just like in this world, who will vie for your attention when there. Therefore, in order to recognize your actual guru or master, you must recognize their face, else you can be grossly misled by a spiritual faker who could lead you astray in the astral realm. That's why the human being whom we call a guru must be like us. They must look like us, live like us, work like us, suffer human existence like us, and perform spiritual practice like us. Because if they don't, we cannot relate to them or learn from them. We will always see them as different from us. The only difference between them and us, therefore, is that in addition to their noble way of living, they are fully accomplished as far as enlightenment is concerned. Thus, they come to teach us and guide us as an example according to our level of comprehension, even while being limited to the human body just like us. But they do not desire to be worshipped or chased everywhere for physical darshan or blessings, especially after one is initiated or baptized by them. They actually come, in fact, to make us accomplished like them, despite our varied background. In this way, they shun the ego idea of being put on a pedestal, of being worshipped like a god, and of validating judgments such as higher or lower, unworthy or worthy, better or worse, and so on. Now, because of this unusual wisdom, kindness and compassion that they exhibit to all who come before them, the worldly minded judge them as false, unfit for reverence, or not to their liking, etc., since most human beings have been taught by Puritan scholars that that God judges everyone as good or bad, right or wrong, worthy or unworthy, and so on, even though the compassionate Lord itself and the Lord's true representatives here on earth do not follow these base or harsh human ways, since we are all children of the same Lord within, but just with different roles to play externally. You see, if holy masters were to judge us like others humans do, then who would go to them? Who would trust them with their very life to reach the point of true love and devotion that is required of disciples in order to surrender their troublesome ego that separates their soul from its blissful and eternal origin? Indeed, when we are drawn to the company of the saints, then the spirituality that is already within us, which is not put there by anyone from outside, is awakened and refined, ready for holy initiation. The mind is then polished, and its better nature shines forth through spiritual practice. Yet, when we first look at our mind deeply, we see its impurities, its defects, and its different expressions. But the saints remind us that the mind too is light itself, imperfect though it may be, but still it is higher than the physical body and its senses. Hence, the first step to knowing thyself is to seek the pure light of your original mind, and then that of your original soul. You see, the current condition of ignorance and waywardness of our mind itself was not its original state. Its involvement with the dramas of this world has made its condition this way. Indeed, as we came into this world, again and again, our scripted desires and actions became such that our current mind's condition that has become what it is today has become formed. Hence the holy masters or perfect saints come to tell us, O mind, you are filthy and blind. What has happened to you? Listen to my calling and realize your true form. This is because our base or unwise reactions to life events and our ever-increasing desires and attachments have made our mind's condition blind and wayward this way. The Holy Masters further explain that by its limited physical nature, how far can the body actually go in attaining anything beyond physical truth? What can it actually achieve regarding true spiritual progress? Its scope is very limited. But at the same time, that very body which houses the mind and soul, when it meditates and thus awakens the Surat, that Surat of the soul has the strength to become a true disciple housed in a physical body, who can only follow it. So the body can only be a follower, never a disciple. And by catching hold of the Dun, or the Shabad Dun, meaning the inner sound of the soul, or Lord, then that Surat can realize the Shabad form of the Master. That's why the Guru Granth Sahib says, again, Shabad Guru, Surat Dun Chela, meaning the Shabad is the Guru, and the soul attuned to the celestial sound is the disciple. It's a pity, though, that we may read or hear such things over and over again, but we do not understand it. This is because there is a tendency for imperfect human beings to find the easiest way out. In this case, the easiest way of being is to physically serve the enlightened ones, or the Guru of the day, who sits right in front of them, often by repeatedly bowing down before him or her and chasing him or her around the world, since we relate ourselves to the body alone right now. So do we relate to the true Guru in the body that it inhabits. We do not relate to the actual Guru or spirit that the physical Guru houses. So no true Guru, or one who teaches the inner path of self-realization and God-realization, ever told us that if we just bow before the Guru, or physically serve them, or other outer practice, that we will make spiritual progress. Instead, if we would pay attention to their actual teachings, we would discover that the true spirituality is only found within us, while all outer activities are just physical expressions that remain in the physical realm of karma. So the role of the true guru is not to be worshipped or served physically, but to teach us about and guide us towards higher awakening of the surit within, thereby introducing us or instructing us how to attach ourselves to the surit of the Shabbat resonating within us, which naturally leads to the realization of the true Guru, the actual form of the Guru who stands before you. So, as we have heard many times, the true Guru is the Shabbat itself, which our body and mind cannot recognize in its current condition of limitation, even by observing outside of itself anything that the Guru does. The Guru too has a karmic body, just like us, that it merely uses to function in the karmic world. Therefore, the Guru's body is limited, just as you are, and is similarly imperfect in its characteristics, just as you are. Yet the higher awareness practice of that Guru results in a rise above the limitations of the body and its karma as a demonstration of how we can do the same. However, in our present condition, when we only see a knowledgeable person standing before us, their manner of speech and their numerous followers, which we like, this attracts us to the external followers too, and then to the one they follow. But when we turn our attention within and do our holy meditation, only then can we recognize a true master. Therefore, when we only follow the external guru of body and mind, can we truly call ourselves disciples of the high truth? You see, the lower truth of knowledge, seva, and worship, even of the Guru, is only for the mind. It entertains the mind and pleases the mind. It makes the mind feel special. It gives the mind a certain comfort, while the mind remains blind. In stark contrast to this, higher truth is for the soul, while the mind actually rebels against it. Nevertheless, the power of the Lord's grace, which is present in one who seeks the higher truth, no matter what the cost, the rebellious mind is subdued, and thus they are sure to succeed. Now, because of our lack of understanding, we only see the Guru as a teacher, but they are not teachers in fact. They are Shabbat Sarups, meaning they are human beings that have merged with the Shabbat of the Supreme Lord, and thus now represent the Supreme Lord in their workings. But what workings do they perform? Well, the answer is not of this world, for they simply have a list of marked souls whom they are responsible for bringing back to their true home by various means. They do not proclaim themselves as anything else other than as a co-travelling special or unconditional friend of the physical realm, who has been assigned the task of bringing the marked ones back to such kind in time. They do this through forming a personal connection of love and devotion, not through doctrinal teachings or physical activities. So, even if one has been initiated by more than one master, then it is the one whom they feel the greatest connection with that will greet them within during meditation and upon death. Then that master will also introduce them to all the others whom the disciple has journeyed with at some point in their life. If one still feels a connection with them, of course, and their true role in your journey will also be shown. In the meantime, one can only play at being a disciple until the pull comes from within. As the saying goes, fake it until you make it, for the sake of pacifying the mind. But at the same time, a deep realization or feeling that the true Lord is the only doer should always be present, so that the ego does not get inflated just because the mind, via the vehicle of the body, has become a good actor as a disciple. However, there is no harm in playing the part of being a disciple of the High Truth, as long as one is not taken in by this, thus deceiving themselves in mind and body. For one can deceive the world, but not their true self or true Lord. Now, regarding the finding of a true Sant Satguru in life, the spiritual seeker is simply not capable of finding such a guru, nor of recognizing such a one by normal means. Indeed, Christ said, "Only the marked sheep hear my whistle, and then they come running, not others." So only a few could understand his high status, and thus devotedly follow him. For example, many gurus, saints, peers, and prophets came in this world. Indeed, which place did they not go? But not everyone believed in them as a guru, a perfect saint or noble mystic, etc. That's why, when the appropriate time comes, only then will we have that recognition, and only then we will be truly receptive. Till then, our attention will remain in this world primarily. With this perspective in mind, it is even the case that a holy master, enlightened one, or Sant Satguru of the day may sit with you, chat with you, entertain you, advise you, eat with you, karmically live in this world just like you, and so on. But you will not recognize them, because in this way they just seem too ordinary and fallible, and are subject to karma just like you, even suffering worldly existence like you. Only if such a one wishes will they let an individual recognize them, though subtly at first, not to be overwhelmed. But if one is not yet ready for such a revelation, one may stay with them their entire life, but will not be able to recognize them. It is simply a question of time, of karmic adjustment. In Gurbani we read that without a certain destiny, the true guru is not found. Even though one may sit close to an enlightened one, daily, in their own home even, they will not recognize such a one who has been awakened beyond the karmic realms. Only a perceptive one may recognize the calm nature and wise attitude of the enlightened one in their presence, which they could simply attribute to a noble human being, an advanced disciple, or a learned man or woman, but will not recognize a true guru even if present. Now, the true Satguru does not come to teach us any worldly teachings as such, of how to make the world a better place for us, or how to attain a noble status in life, or even how to make better our physical lives in this world. They only teach the simple truth about our higher self and how to discover that truth for ourselves. The rest, they say, is just our karma unfolding in this lifetime as the given script of life for us. Yet despite hearing this, at first, in our current condition, we cannot distinguish between knowledge and wisdom. When we read our holy books, we get knowledge, but when we act on that knowledge, we get experience or wisdom. In the beginning, you see, we start with outer knowledge gained from our holy books, scriptures, or listening to talks and teachings, etc. But still, when there is any difficulty in life, when we go through hard times, we start wavering, because our entire faith was built upon outer knowledge alone. But those who have gained actual experience through spiritual practice will not waver. They simply understand or know the bigger truth. Even in the Vedas, a word is used to describe the state of inner knowing, and that word is jnana. Now, that special knowing does not come from simple knowledge, It comes from our inner knowing. Baltu Sahib, a former holy master and hero of the high truth from North India, says this: "The learned one from books, while debating in his mind about that knowledge, loftily walks along and falls into the well, then suffers, for he does not see where he is going. So occupied in mental chatter and cleverness is he, since his mind is entangled in mental illusions, where true understanding through inner awakening is totally absent." When the time comes from the Lord to be merciful, then our soul, accompanied by the mind, meets the Shabad in its human form, which we call a holy master, perfect saint, or Sant Satguru, Murshid, Pir, or noble mystic. Indeed, we can only meet the Satguru due to the Lord's grace, who mercifully puts us on the right path to true knowledge turned wisdom. But what is that true knowledge? The Gurbani of the Sikhs says, through the Guru's will alone, its divine comprehension through holy meditation is obtained. And through tuning into the Shabad Dun, one can know the ultimate one, not through any other means. But that Dun itself is indescribable, and so cannot be put into words. But when we are tuned into it, then we can know it. Whatever holy books we may have, or whatever talks we may listen to, they are from the experiences of others, not of our own. They tell of how those others devoted themselves to God, how they achieved enlightenment, and what was the essence of their lives. But the essence of their lives is for their own selves, as an example only, for every individual is unique in truth. Yet this treasure which they give us, we should learn from by doing the same practice, not just reading about their own experiences, but learning how they go those experiences. If we follow their example, then we too will gain that experience that they talked about. But if we think that our wisdom will develop through listening to or reading about the experiences of someone else, it will not be so. Even if a master were to sit right before you and give endless talks about spirituality, it will still not be so, because it is not our experience. Someone else's experience, therefore, can never be our own, can never yield the personal results we seek. But personal experience through holy meditation can yield the results. That's why Babaji of Bihar says, even if we start gently, with just a few sincere minutes each day, and build upon that, we are bound to succeed. Now, generally speaking, in the satsangs of the saints, you will often hear the following example to illustrate this point. If someone we respect puts a sweet in front of us and says that this is the sweetest thing in the world, then due to our respect for them, we would likely accept this. But by doing so, will the background query of our mind ever go? Somewhere in our mind, a doubt will remain as to whether it is indeed the sweetest thing. But if we actually tasted that sweet, only then can we say with conviction that yes, it is the sweetest thing. Therefore, if we put in an effort to do our spiritual practice daily, with this understanding in mind, and be patient enough to see it through, with trust and faith in our Holy Master, as a true test of our desire and readiness to receive precious enlightenment, rather than just talking or dreaming about it, by persisting through the usual time lag of spiritual practice, which simply exists because of the immense preciousness of what we are about to receive after countless millions of births in countless forms, then we naturally become worthy of the enlightenment we so earnestly seek, and its resulting truth, love and bliss, following which we find and understand its true essence for ourselves. no need to read about it or hear about it from others anymore. Indeed, from that point on, our life changes forever. So this inner awakening is not something to be taken lightly, and it is not optional for satsangis of a perfect living master. But until this happens, until we take action, we will always tend to waver in our spiritual practice, our belief system. Naturally so, in fact. We will even doubt the master from time to time. But many then ask, when actually does this transformation happen? From a mere curiosity seeker to an earnest, sincere seeker? The answer is, when the time is right for you, which could be the next moment, or it could be a lifetime away. You do not know. Therefore, it is correct to say that only after the Lord's grace is awakened, due to one's readiness, does a disciple of the high truth change from merely seeking the lower truth of the mind to seeking the high truth of the soul, and thus gets into the right state of desire for truth realization. So, when one is ready, they will have this yearning and pull from within to know the highest truth, no matter what the cost. The initial sign of this good fortune is that we become naturally inclined to seek the high truth then, even passionately so, while naturally letting go of worldly obsessions or negativity in order to attain the mental peace needed for high realization. Yet it must be understood that it is only through the Lord's grace that we can realize these things. So even though one may listen to or recite countless scriptures, perform countless hours of seva, or sit close to a Sant Satguru or an enlightened one daily, or indeed perform any other physical act of external devotion, this doesn't help. It's just for the mind, to pacify the mind. In other words, mere close proximity to an enlightened one does not confer upon anyone actual enlightenment itself, only possible comfort. But then, how do we recognize a true disciple of the highest truth? Does such a thing exist? If once initiated, a disciple simply chases the physical master in this world, or desires the verbal or written teachings of the masters alone, or even tentatively meditates on the physical form of the master as a form of worship, but with a corresponding chatter in the mind, and thus only connects with the physical or mindful form of the master, without developing a sincere and deeper yearning for the high truth of everything, no matter what the cost, then one will always remain in the karmic realms of creation, in one form or another, because the body, mind and character of even the master that one would attach themselves to also only functions in the three karmic realms of creation, just like your character self does. Therefore, greatly fortunate is the one who realizes this great truth and thus strives towards it, whether they continue to fail in their earnest practice or not, while their karmas are being cleared. For they shall be rewarded with the Lord's further grace for such an effort, regardless of any success. Such an individual, who against all odds persists diligently with their best efforts for high truth realization, shall always be rewarded upon their death, and even during their life in many ways. As Sant teaches, you will only go where your attachments or desires are, without exception. So, if you are attached only to the physical or mindful form of the master, without seeking the higher truth within, then you cannot leave the karmic realms of Kal or illusion. However, by connecting with the Shabad Guru within you, as a priority in life, through the practice of true Guru Bhakti, meaning sincere devotion, right, and grateful and gratitude to that master, that master actually offers you, then this will allow you to discover for yourself the purely spiritual form of your high truth, meaning the soul, and then naturally that of the Supreme Lord itself, while being comforted and guided by your Holy Master in the initial stages. Indeed, the Holy Shabad is the only power able to pull you out of the karmic realms into the purely spiritual realms, which results in true and permanent salvation. This is because it allows you to wholeheartedly surrender yourself to your salvation master within, through the bond of true love, and thus merge with them, in order to cross the impenetrable boundary of the mind and Maya. That's why true Sant Mat emphasizes upon connecting with the Shabad Guru within, not the physical Guru, that only a true Holy Master teaches you about and allows you access to at the appropriate time. Furthermore, a real true seeker is prepared to face the initial mental discomfort of discovering and knowing the high truth of all existence, while a mere comfort seeker only wants to hear words of comfort for their weary mind that doesn't ultimately lead anywhere. Hence for them, the Holy Master is a mere figurehead, entertainer, or comforter, to be taken as one's whims dictate, rather than as the true Shabad in human form. So from this knowledge, one can personally recognize where they are currently at on their spiritual journey, and thus what to realistically expect at this time. It must therefore be understood that the resonating power within you that resembles sound is the only pathway to eternal truth and bliss for any human being from any background while in their physical body, that the true saints all speak of, and not through any visions or other expressions of the mind that only offer some comfort or distraction, till they become blessed with a true knowledge of the hierarchy of body, mind and soul in creation. Until that point is reached, then, all talks, books or meetings with the enlightened ones are mere enticements to encourage you to seek the high truth from within yourself in order to be truly saved and truly glorious once more. No religion is needed, no rituals are required, no attachment to physical forms are necessary, for all these things are still illusory, designed to distract you from the high truth itself, at least, and also as a test of worthiness. So, the true Guru is there to help you connect with the Shabad Guru within. Once initiated, there is no interest thereafter in the true Guru wanting you to follow them around, to worship them in any way, other than to listen to what they have to say, pay close attention to it, and follow it through for yourself. Similarly, all talks, debates, thoughts and deeds performed by the mind are simply a part of the universal script of creation, acted out by many individuals for the sake of the great play of the Lord continuing by design. You see, without participants in creation believing in and acting out their part in the great play, then the creation itself, bar the Supreme Lord, would cease to exist. Meanwhile, all such activities, whether noble or not, whether religious or otherwise, or whether in ignorance or with true knowledge, bar one exception, even those performed with great zeal or misery, doesn't count for anything in the court of the true Lord regarding one's true salvation, for they are simply performed for the pacification, settlement and satisfaction of the mind according to one's karma, and not for the soul. The only activity that the soul needs is true Guru Bhakti, true meditation, and meditation and connecting with the Shabad within. Now, this special exception that I mentioned earlier, if taken up by any individual who has been spiritually awakened by a Holy Master or Sant Satguru of the day, becomes the only means of escape from the otherwise illusory activities of worldly existence. This highly praised special exception activity is simply this: connecting oneself to the holy Shabbat within, once it is made known to them, or fostering the most earnest and sincerest desire to do so as one's primary objective in life, even while performing one's worldly duties. It must be said, though, that even if not accomplished in this life, all sincere efforts in this regard brings favour upon that individual, that results in one of two outcomes: either rebirth in a human form in better circumstances, or to continue their spiritual work, or a salvation sanctuary in one of the heavenly realms for rest, before returning back to the human form for another chance to complete the task. Meanwhile, for those who become accomplished in the task, then there is no need for them to return to lower or karmic creation again. They will remain with their true Lord and Master in the higher spiritual realms till the next part of their existence journey begins. Indeed, bathed in the full glory of their new high status, they can either descend as a spiritual teacher themselves somewhere, or can merge with the ultimate oneness of a Nami Lok in a totality of bliss. Now, many stories are told about one's efforts and responsibilities in all of this as participants in creation, but the truth is that one can only put in an effort by the Lord's grace, and not by the power of their wayward mind. Indeed, when the time comes to be truly fed up with worldly existence, then that feeling or need to find out and connect with the higher truth behind it all will start to consume that individual, causing them to become silent, withdrawn somewhat, and a truly sincere seeker or devotee of the high truth, often in secret. The greatest gift that the Supreme Lord can bestow upon any disciple is a longing for the truth, for the highest truth and the true Lord. Until that time, a disciple has to work with their mind's view of spirituality till that longing need comes within them, usually through personal suffering or perceived failure in this world. Only then will that disciple put in a real effort or make a real sacrifice and let themselves follow the will of the Lord. So till that time arrives, the disciples will simply take things for granted, even if the Lord's grace is in their life. Therefore, if we simply chase the physical master to satisfy our longing, then we will always end this habit with disappointment, because the time of physical meetings will eventually end. But if we channelize this longing into our personal spiritual practice, then we will forever be in the Lord's company. Jesus famously said at the Last Supper meal with his disciples, when they asked, "Master, who will we go to when you are gone?" To which Jesus replied, "If ye drinketh of this water on the table before you, ye shall thirst again. But if ye drinketh of the water that I have given you within you, ye shall never thirst again." So, until that time comes, a seeker or disciple should be ever vigilant and honest about their current state of spiritual discipline, and as an observer rather than that of a critic, in fact, but with faith and trust in their heart that their time will surely come when they feel the pull within. For those initiated by Holy Master of the Day, one should do one's very best to practice what is taught, so that further grace can fall upon them. Their thoughts should always lend themselves towards personal inner inquiry and its practice, to find peace in their heart and to become a confident knower of the high truth of Sant. That thought should be allowed to consume them day and night, till fully realized. One should not fear the consequences of such a pursuit, thinking that their life would become dull or poverty-stricken, or that somehow they would miss out on life by being partly withdrawn and less involved with the world. Now, for those who think that they are unworthy of such a grace to begin with, then just remember this: you are in truth a divine being undergoing a human experience, but have become trapped in the delusion of misery and struggle. By associating yourself with the temporary character you are playing, which is actually an illusory impostor, hijacking your soul, you are just waiting to wake up. Furthermore, a true master is neither a forgiver nor a punisher, only a transformer towards the realization of profound wisdom, a change that only the true master can bestow. Guru Nanak, for example, not only accepted but also transformed Sheikh Sajjan, the serial killer, and Kordabil, the cannibal, into Gurmukhs in his day, just to prove that anyone can be made worthy of grace, no matter how high or low is their status. All that is needed is that they become truly fed up with their current life role or current state of their life, and thus seek higher answers and want to truly change. However, once true grace falls upon them, and the process of change and transformation is started, whether through joy or through suffering, none should boast about their good fortune, nor become bitter of their bad fortune. The former should thank profusely the Lord for their merciful grace, and the latter should humbly beg the Lord for such grace. Through this means, both will succeed in the end. The rest will have to wait for another time, in another lifetime. So the final part of this, you'll be pleased to know, is I've been asked, can you speak about the role of the Holy Trinity of pious living as described in Sant books of Darshan, Satsang and Seva? You see, these activities of Darshan, Satsang and Seva for disciples of a holy master, perfect saint or noble mystic, etc., are simply there to initially serve the spiritually inquiring mind, and to then help them keep on track spiritually by reminding it of the spiritual goal that one has now become aware of. But these activities do not replace or compare well to actual spiritual practice, as these activities are only in the beginning helpful for our spiritual journey or awakening. But once holy meditation and pious living is sufficiently practiced and enjoyed, then the need for those lower forms of reminding naturally fall away. Certainly, in the beginning, these physical activities do help to create the right atmosphere for deeper spiritual inquiry, but they do not actually advance us spiritually in themselves. So if we remain only in the want of physical activity and do not take the next step towards more personal spiritual practice, then these outer activities haven't served us well. Indeed, they should never be treated as a replacement for true spiritual practice, but just as a supplementary activity. But this depends upon the level of company one keeps during these physical activities. The trouble is that most of us get stuck in these outer activities and so never make spiritual progress within. This soon leads to personal frustration and disappointment with their progress, which then leads them to pursue these physical activities even more, but now, rather than merely supporting their sincere efforts of true spiritual practice, these outer activities are more for the sake of benefiting from a sense of community, belonging, or passing time with friends and associates, so as to not feel too guilty about not doing their true spiritual practice. At this point, however, it becomes very difficult to let go of these mind-pleasing outer activities and to instead find greater enjoyment within oneself through true spiritual practice. So one should seriously bear this in mind when doing these physical activities of darshan, satsang and seva alone, so as to not get trapped in the common misunderstanding that these outer activities actually contribute to true spiritual practice rather than just supporting it. for they do not. Yet for those engaged in outer activities this way, these activities simply offer a distraction to keep the mind happy. Now, once initiated by a true holy master, for most, the disciple doesn't realize what has actually happened, nor feels any different. But over time, as the process of transformation takes place, then the true meaning of holy initiation starts to take effect, especially once certain karmas are dealt with. The role of the holy masters, therefore, is to simply introduce a seeker to the path of the high truth, and to then awaken that individual to become more receptive to that truth, thereby guiding them at the pace they can handle back to their true origin of truth, glory and bliss. All other activities are simply there to either provide comfort for the weary mind or to entertain the seekers and disciples with philosophically interesting talks and answers for their ever-fascinated minds. So now, having heard this high truth explained so clearly and truthfully, what can be done about this newfound knowledge? There are several responses, usually. First is the complete acceptance and comprehension of it all by the quiet minority, with the resulting desire to then satisfy and simplify and declutter their life by attaching themselves to spiritual practice earnestly, thus letting go of their control-seeking self, and so just going with the flow in constant remembrance of the high truth. The second level of response is to again understand what is being said, but instead of acceptance, they prefer to engage their analytical mind philosophically by feeling that there must be something more to human existence than being mere automatons or robot-like. Therefore, they deny this truth implication of the scripted lives without free will, and so cannot accept life's outcomes. They thus frequently rebel against the finery of this high truth by testing it out with their so-called will, to push the boundaries and see what really happens. Yet life doesn't improve for them, as everything is still scripted, even their rebellion. However, they feel satisfied that they are challenging the outcome to possibly change things, even though it never actually works in the long run. But still, their pent-up desires plays the game of challenge and losing, hoping for a win one day, much like an addicted gambler. Indeed, this hope of winning against the odds and against the system keeps them going till they either die or learn. The third level of response is to almost completely refuse this knowledge of the high truth initially, and thus remain in foolish denial. This means that such inquirers continue in the world just as they were, without deeper thought about it all, and so continue with the same cycle of action and results that they have always struggled with during their life, until they become truly fed up, and then recall the wisdom of the high truth that they encountered some time ago. This then begins the process of the gradual evaluation of life philosophies, leading to a serious inquiry into the high truth itself, that culminates in the following of a Sant Satguru or holy master, till complete acceptance occurs, where finally some real spiritual progress is made, which validates it further, and so on. The final category is for those who would never hear such a complete high truth in this lifetime, even if somehow initiated by a holy master of the day, and therefore would simply continue to follow their whims based upon their sanskars or inherited traits. For this reason, through their own ignorance, they continue to generate ongoing desires and attachments that keeps the karmic system of creation going for them. Without that ignorance and human weakness being there, then the creation would end. At the moment such truth is heard and immediately followed by everyone, the karmic system that creates new destinies would fail. So the ignorant ones keep the karmic creation going, and suffer pain and so-called pleasure as a result. It's a wonderful system of grand deceit, really, so the Holy Masters tell us. That is why, out of sheer mercy and karmic protocol, Holy Masters of Sant Satgurus come to rescue the ready ones and not others. And I hope you all become one of them. Now, regarding the 7 noble ways of living that must be observed in order to succeed as a true disciple on the high spiritual path of Santman, which also helps to identify a true disciple of a Holy Master, I will reaffirm them here for completeness' sake, and as a simple reminder of how to walk the talk or how to live a truly pious way of life. So these are indicators of someone who is a true disciple as opposed to a follower of a belief system. Number 1, do no intentional harm to neither oneself, others, or the planet, whether in thought, word, or deed. The emphasis there is intentional, because sometimes we do unintentional harm and then we repent afterwards. Number 2, do not judge, criticize, or condemn anyone or anything in creation. In other words, live in the Lord's will for you, for all is illusion here, simply projected as the karmic law of cause and effect. Number 3, do not unnecessarily be a burden upon others. Fulfill your given duties and responsibilities in life in the Lord's name. Number 4, be forever grateful or appreciative for what you have, no matter how big or small, especially for your safety, shelter, food, clothing, and higher knowledge. Number 5, always seek the high truth, whether in life or in spirituality. Number 6, be forever mindful of your impact upon others and on the planet. Always leave others and the environment better off for having met you. And finally, number 7, do your spiritual practice sincerely, with devotion, faith, and trust in your spiritual master or Lord. Now, these are the foundations of pious living in a modern age, which can be used to automatically check yourself before any action is taken, till it becomes a natural habit without thought. This is the noble way of living that all true spiritual aspirants should aspire to. Indeed, it also marks the identification of a true disciple of the Supreme Lord in Santma. Yet, having said all this, who can actually be labelled as good or bad, and who should be punished or rewarded? Indeed, when speaking of the Almighty Lord, Guru Angad Ji, the second Guru of the Sikh faith, said, "The Lord himself creates, O Nanak. He establishes the various creatures. How can anyone be called good or bad? There is but one Lord and Master of them all. He watches over all and assigns all to their tasks, which they accomplish in his name. All is his hukm, meaning divine will, yet all is illusion, meaning just a play of the divine." End of quote. Many examples of this, other examples of this truth, are quoted by the various holy visitors that I could quote, but the essence and point is made clear through this verse. Now, through all this, it might seem that God is putting trillions of organisms into suffering just to amuse itself, but in reality, it's all the Lord itself playing all the parts, where we too are part of the Lord, for the Lord is expressed as Mahamaya, or great illusion, projected as matter, energy, and bhavana, or giver of the soul. Indeed, the Lord is Param Ishwara, the source of our soul. Therefore, we are all the Lord in different forms, yet we think we are separate from the Lord, because that allows the divine play to proceed convincingly. In the end, the Lord is alone, doing all this to amuse himself, and so there is nothing morally wrong about it. Indeed, the more you understand this truth, the more you will understand that you are all part of the Lord too. Think of it this way: If you pinch yourself to amuse yourself, is that morally wrong? Well, no, it isn't. The same goes for the Lord's great play of divinity, which we call creation. So what is the role of suffering then, if it's not morally wrong? Well, the Holy Masters tell us that suffering is a great teacher, undeniably helpful in the illusory world we live in. It is therefore not a mistake, for suffering humbles the ego. It shakes us out of the illusion that true happiness lies in this fleeting material world. Thus it redirects our longing towards the eternal high truth. Hence the purpose of suffering is not punishment, but to redirect one to seek the high truth, alongside providing mindful purification and spiritual awakening. Suffering indeed forces one to undergo a phase transition for the better, especially noted in the personal life of true spiritual aspirants. Now I shall finally end with this query that I received in person when a colleague asked me this: why do I care so much to make such an effort to teach the high truth, when so many other teachers out there are content to only offer the basic truths, just enough to give some comfort to the weary mind, and to the suffering? It seems so strange that you bother so much, without even seeking recognition for it. Well, noting their concerned puzzlement, I simply said this: is it so strange to care about the welfare of others, and about the suffering that I see all around me? To which they replied, no, it's not that. But it is certainly strange that you, a successful doctor, philosopher and scientist, should actually want to do something about it, and in such a hostile world, through speaking so openly, so freely, and risking all, without even getting any recognition for such. Upon hearing this, I concluded the conversation by laughingly saying, what else can I do? Having been given this wisdom freely, out of mercy by the true Lord, to help me through the great troubles of life that I have faced at the time, for which I had no answers or comfort through my intellect alone, nor from my associates at any time, until the Lord found me, comforted me, and restored me to my own high truth glory. If the Lord took such pity upon me, then how can I not share that kindness with others, who are in the same or even greater difficulty than I once was? I went on to remind them of a story which I will share with you today, regarding the mercy of Guru Nanak of the Sikh faith, a truly great guru of his time in India, who defied even the religious authorities of his day in order to teach the high truth that his own revered master, Sant Sahib, had imparted to him. This is how the story was told by his faithful companion and Sevadar Mardana, who was also Guru Nanak's disciple. After a long walk between villages in North India, at a time when Guru Nanak was on tour helping others out of their misery through his great knowledge and mercy, the night was drawing near, and a small entourage had to make a camp for the night. As was customary before the evening satsang, Guru Nanak would sit in deep samadhi, meaning meditation, to prepare for the satsang, while the camp was being settled by his sevadars. On this occasion, there was a slow-moving stream at the bottom of a steep ridge, where a large tree with overhanging branches was present at the very edge of the stream to comfortably sit against, which Guru Nanak promptly chose for his early evening meditation session. Meanwhile, Mardana, his close disciple, was at the top of the ridge collecting firewood for the camp. Now, as he was busying himself collecting the firewood, he would glance down to see Guru Nanak, his Lord and Master, sitting in perfect peace and stillness a short distance away, which made him wonder if he would ever achieve the same. Now, at one point, while in that contemplation, Mardana leaned against a tree for a moment, holding some firewood in his hand. In the stillness and peace of that evening, where no wind or other disturbance was there to bother him, he just leaned against a tree contemplating, when suddenly there was a plop in the water. A small, non-venomous scorpion had fallen into the water from its overhanging branch, right in front of Guru Nanak, and was struggling to stay afloat. Upon becoming aware of this, Guru Nanak opened his eyes, saw the struggling scorpion, and immediately reached out his hand to rescue the scorpion, which then promptly stung him in the hand, and Guru Nanak proceeded to then carefully place the scorpion back onto its branch, which was low enough for the Guru to reach without standing up. Guru Nanak then rubbed his sore hand where the scorpion had stung and promptly resumed his meditation. But moments later, again, the scorpion fell into the water with a plop, and again Guru Nanak opened his eyes and reached out to rescue the scorpion. The scorpion again stung him, yet ignoring this, the Guru got up to more carefully place the scorpion back onto the branch it was resting upon, to make sure it was steady. Having done this, the Guru then rubbed his sore hand and resumed his meditation. However, some moments later again, the scorpion fell into the water, and again the Guru opened his eyes, rescued the scorpion, who again stung him, but this time Guru Nanak fully stood up and even more carefully placed the scorpion upon the branch and waited a bit longer for the scorpion to be settled before rubbing his sore hand and then resuming his meditation. But again, moments later, the scorpion fell into the water, and again Guru Nanak rescued the scorpion, which again stung the Guru's hand. And so this time, Guru Nanak decided that the place upon which the scorpion was sitting was not safe enough for the scorpion to remain. And so the Guru decided to place the scorpion on the wider part of the branch that the scorpion was sitting on, which was closer to the trunk, while apologizing to the scorpion for relocating it from its preferred resting position, then rubbed his now very sore hand and resumed his meditation. Yet some moments later, again the scorpion fell into the water, and again Guru Nanak rescued the scorpion, though this time the Guru even more carefully than before placed the scorpion on the widest part of the branch and waited even longer for the scorpion to settle. It was at this time that Mardana, who was resting against the tree at the top of the ridge, watching all this and being confused by what he was seeing, decided to pluck up the courage to go down to his Guru and seek an answer to the strange behaviour that he was witnessing, since Guru Nanak was still standing by the tree watching the scorpion settle. So Mardana tentatively approached his Guru with folded hands and begged forgiveness for disturbing the Guru. Guru Nanak calmly smiled and said, "Welcome, son, what do you need?" Now Mardana was not sure what to say, so he just decided to be straight with his inquiry by saying, "Master, I am puzzled. I have been watching you for a while to enjoy your darshan from upon the ridge, but saw something very strange happening." Guru Nanak then lovingly smiled and said, "What is it so strange that you observed, my son?" To which Mardana said, "Well, I have watched you rescue this scorpion time and again, even though it doesn't show any appreciation. The scorpion just stings you, yet still you respond by ignoring that and carefully placing the scorpion back onto its perch. Why do you continue to help such an ungrateful one, who simply stings you?" Guru Nanak then laughed and lovingly said, "Oh, is it this that bothers you? Well, my son, is it not in the nature of scorpions to sting?" To which Mardana replied, "Yes, master. But then, knowing this, why do you continue to put yourself in harm's way to rescue such a one? Then Guru Nanak replied again laughingly by saying, well, is it not in my nature to help all those who come before me, regardless? To which Mardana had no reply, just bowing his head in recognition and begging his leave to continue his seva. So you see, both were helpless in their nature, the scorpion and the Guru. The point is that when one is filled with love and compassion, coupled with knowledge of the high truth of it all, then how can such an afflicted one behave in any other way but with kindness to all who approach him? In this way, Guru Nanak's infinite patience and kindness are a lesson for all humanity. May the true Lord bless you all. And let's now return to the questions from the public as well as the audience. And again, I apologize for a very long satsang, but this is a culmination of several persistent inquiries I have been receiving, and I hope now to have covered them all in a public satsang. So forgive me for those who are sitting here so patiently, but don't worry, your efforts will not be unrewarded. Please, now let's continue with the question and answer session.
Thank you. Right, the theme for these questions is living the spiritual way of life. The first question relates to perfect living masters.
Yeah.
Do perfect living masters know their future? Are the events of their life visible? And do they also see what's in the future for their satsangis?
Well, the answer is yes, of course they do. All living masters know their future. They also know the plight of those who come before them. The difference is that they do not divulge this information to shock the person before them, because even if one follows a true Sant Satguru, a living holy master, then we still see them as human beings. We still see them as limited like us, and we feel safe that our mind is our own and that our thoughts and our personal experiences are our own and cannot be seen by another. If a holy master were to immediately explain everything that's happening to the disciple, and so openly as if they could read their mind, the disciple would become fearful. It is only when they reach a certain stage of spiritual practice that the Guru could be more and more open. So in the beginning there's a relationship Guru-Master. Now the headmaster points out the teaching, the basics, and reminds you of that. As the relationship grows, more personal talk is engaged. Until you get to such a point that the disciple is ready for anything. They've now become a lover of the Lord and the Master. And from there, the Master can reveal them anything he wants. So, similarly, Masters themselves never talk about their own futures. They never talk about what is to come, for the same reason that the Sangha is not ready for all that. Because we are so driven by our perception of what we see and hear, what we witness through the five senses, to be the totality of reality, rather than seeing it from a bigger point of view. That if a master was actually to say certain things in advance, even things which are failings or successes, people would take this in a very interesting way. It would confuse them, because the karmic master who comes here is governed by the karmic rules that I've just mentioned here in detail. A physical master is no different to any one of us, except in their awakening, except in their awareness. In order to function in this world, a physical master has to be like us. They have to do everything we do, and they have to have the karma we have. No one, not even a master, can live in this world without karma. Now, because they have no karma to start with, they borrow it. They borrow a body, release that one, and come into that body, and whatever that body may be. It could be beautiful, it could be ugly, you could have a lot of suffering, you could have easy, but whatever is available at the time, coming to the system, into that community, the master must follow. So the master takes a personal choice to come into this world and takes on personal suffering just to teach, just to help others. The difference is that you come here not out of your will, you're driven here by karma. Masters have the option, they don't have to come back, but they come here to help humanity out of something called compassion, unconditional compassion and love. These are alien to the mind. Only the soul recognizes unconditional love and compassion and kindness. The mind hijacks these things and creates its own interpretation. So sometimes when somebody is tentatively following that, we say, oh, they're such a kind person. But they have the limits to their kindness. If you push them enough, they'll break. Yeah, masters never break. And the proof is, like, for example, Jesus could have escaped with his divine powers, his crucifixion. He could have cursed all those. He could have put a final curse on them saying, now you shall all be condemned because you're doing this to me. He didn't. He said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Right to the very end. He maintained that compassion and that love. Even so, they were crucifying him. Similarly with Guru Arjan there, the fifth Guru, who was made to sit on hot iron and hot coals and poured boiling oil over and all manner of tortures. He had 3 days to escape. And he said to his disciples, you know, here there's 800 currency there that you could give to the emperor, and you could escape. He said, no. He said, I need to be here, I need to do this. Why? To show the difference between a Sant Satguru and a normal teacher. That a Sant Satguru is the ultimate expression of divinity, love and devotion, and therefore they demonstrate that no matter what you face, they have faced worse. And they did it smilingly. Because you believe that you're just a body. And if you die, what's going to happen to you? So the whole point of spiritual practice is for you to connect with your higher self, know that you're more than a body, then you happily die. You don't care. That's why Jesus and Guru Nanak and others recklessly abandoned their body, as you would see it, because they knew they weren't the body. But this reckless abandonment wasn't without meaning. It was to set an example of how far one can go to follow the principles of unconditional love and truth, no matter what the cost, remember, to the ultimate end. Not that they say everybody should do this, no. It's not advocate. It's just demonstrating what is possible. Now, of course, what you do not understand is that when they were being persecuted in such a manner, they felt no pain. They felt nothing, because the consciousness that gives the pain sense was withdrawn. So they suffered, but they felt nothing. But everybody else, knowing the relationship between this torture and pain, were feeling so heartbroken. But the reports were that both Guru Nanak and Jesus were smiling. How could you be smiling if you've been tortured? Unless you didn't feel it. So there's the clue to that. So yes, each master, guru or enlightened one is fully aware, but they choose to fake blind ignorance simply for the sake of the audience. But sometimes privately they will say, this is the better option, and it always works. Whenever they give their advice, it's always helpful, it's always good, it's always noble, and it always works.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is about an awakening. There are many pundits and astrologers, for example, Dr. David Clements, who says humanity is on the verge of a mass consciousness awakening, sometimes referred to as the New Earth. What is the truth of this, and if true, how does this growth in consciousness in people happen without a perfect living master being involved?
Again, referring to the satsang previously, the difference between the mind element, which is part of the illusion of all of this creation, and the soul, which is beyond the mind and maya. The questioner is asking from the point of view of the mind. So in the mind, we look at a PLM as a mind being. Again, just what I said, we think of them as a participant in creation because they're physically here, they eat like us, they work like us, they sleep like us. But their level of awareness is beyond the physical. So to compare the New Age movement to the teachings of a PLM, or that somehow the consciousness has been raised to the level of a PM is not that. If the consciousness is raised even to the astral realm level, that is a massive spiritual shift in level of awareness, but nowhere near the level of awareness of a perfect living master. So there is no comparison at all. But we certainly have entered a new era since 2012 called Dwapara Yuga for the next 2,500 years, with a corresponding transition period of 25 years, which is what we're experiencing now. So although Dwapara Yuga is a more spiritually elevated condition, but still not way short of even the astral realm, then an observer or a philosopher or an astrologer, like in this case, Dr. Clemens, would see, oh, there's a spiritual awakening going on. There's some elevation going on. And what he's describing, let's say, is the Yuga period, the change in Yugas. But this is happening gradually because there's a 25-year, in this case, transition period, which we're going through all hell and nightmares, before the more spiritual awareness happens. Now, for humans to transform spiritually, they have to be shaken up. If we're shaken up, we would say this is suffering. So now when people look at the world, they say, my goodness, the world's in turmoil, all these things are happening. What's happening? We're getting worse rather than better. It's just a transition phase. Ultimately, if you look at the undercurrent of humanity, its spirituality is increasing. More people are becoming vegan. More people are looking at climate change, and more people are looking at improving human societies. There's a lot of work which is not reported for the reasons I said above. A lot of organisations working behind the scenes to improve the lot of human beings that will come to prominence in the 2030s. Because once the media is sorted out, reporting the fear-mongering negative news to keep population control, then good stories will come forward, and you'll see about all the advances that are being made. Secretly, there's a lot of advances going on around what you have no knowledge of, unless you're involved in that industry. But eventually it becomes so prominent, it'll just burst, because then even the media cannot suppress it. And then you'll find out that all this time you thought it was all misery and doom and gloom, actually something else was happening. But yes, on the surface, there is a change that we're going through of unrest, civil unrest, where everything has to shift to a higher way of thinking, and that has to be done through what we call natural means. Therefore, you have to be forced to do it, because if somebody just started becoming enlightened mysteriously and walking about and saying, I'm suddenly enlightened, I just stood under this tree, everybody will say either they're a crackpot and not listen to them, or you'll be scared of them. Well, what can you do? So this transition happens so naturally that we do not even know we've entered Dwapara Yuga since 2012, but we have. That's why since that time there's been so many changes positively in the background, and it's only recently, in recent years, we've had these terrible stories of these wars and this civil unrest and all these issues that are being fueled by a certain industry. But that's not all that's going on behind the scenes. So yes, there is a new age era of spiritual growth, climate change and better technologies to help us, and it will come to fruition by the mid-1930s. You just have to buckle down and bear with it for now. Yeah, even greater calamities are to come first.
Thank you. Okay, this question is about good and bad deeds. After death, as it is stated, good credit or deeds do not cancel out bad credit or deeds at the justice court. Does it mean that everyone shall have to go to hell for their bad deeds and then also go to heaven for their good deeds?
The first part is true, the second part isn't. Yes, good deeds do not cancel out bad deeds. The karmic system works quite differently to mitigation. There's no such thing as mitigation. It's black and white. On Earth, because we have something called human emotions, we have mitigating factors. So if somebody's done wrong in the past, then they can be forgiven, and even that could be dismissed, they could be pardoned, let's say by the governor or the king, by the president, and then they can carry on with their good activities now as if the bad never happened. In the karmic system, it doesn't work like that. Because it's a timeline effect. And in that timeline, each action created a ripple effect that spread into the total fabric of the universe. It has a long-term implication for everything and so many others. How would you then mitigate that? How would you withdraw that? You can't. So therefore the consequence must be met. So the karmic system says that if you've done all your life, let's say you've managed to be good, you did one day of bad, you still have to pay for that bad for one day, right? And the rest of the days will be good. But the second part, that this has to be done in a heaven and a hell, no. The karmic system extends right up to Trikuti, the topic Trikuti. So depending on what the script is laying out for you, which you do not know at that time, then you'll be given a certain type of birth appropriate. Now, yes, it may be the case that you are destined to go to the heaven for a time, to keep out of the mainstream creation for a little while things adjust, and then you come back into it because it's scripted. But nothing happens by chance. Everything, every breath, every moment, every second is pre-scripted and predetermined. If that didn't happen, then something called order could not exist. The whole concept of order, mathematically speaking, is based on the precise mathematical values of all the forces of nature and of matter. If they do not act in such perfect unison, then structure, matter could not exist. We could not have planets even, stars or human beings. You couldn't even have a cup or a piece of paper held together by forces. Imagine if one of those forces, like electron, decide, oh, I'm fed up of being so conformist, I'm going to go off script. Imagine what would happen to all the electrons decide to go off script. What would happen to the universe? It would be chaos. It would become a cosmic soup. So we have evidence of this in the physical world around us. So even if you don't like this mentally, you have to prove that matter and people have free will. I've never found anybody able to prove it because of this order. You cannot have chaos and order at the same time. So from that point of view, the script determines what happens to each individual. And it could be that they have to pay off the good or bad period in one of the lower regions, let's say the astral realm or the causal realm, and not have to go to a heaven or a hell. Yeah. Similarly, they might have to suffer in the astral realm because they have, in their script, it says that their suffering is going to result in them meeting these sets of individuals in an astral realm to undergo torture by them or difficulty by them at that level. The network of our existence spreads to everything. We're not isolated from the rest of creation. As an individual being, let's say you were alone in this conscious world. No one else existed, just you. The tentacles, the network of your connection with all parts of creation would be there. Because you are a fundamental, integral part of creation. And your effect is far-reaching everywhere. Every thought, every deed, every action is far-reaching. When you look at the extent of karma, it boggles the mind. It stuns you how complex it is, yet how perfectly ordered it is. Because of this thing called a script, or perfect order, it works. This immensely complicated interaction between individuals, matter and energy, all working in unison together, works. As we see, creation is there. We see a creation in front of us. It could not be possible if any part of that creation had free will or independence. It can't. Okay, yes? No questions now.
Thank you. Can spiritual merits be used to cancel out bad deeds to prevent us going to hell?
No. It's a short answer. I think I've answered that question already.
You have. Okay, got a few questions about death.
Yeah.
Based on the law of karma, is there anything like accidental death? If so, does the spirit of the departed person still go before the justice court after 49 days?
You see, when you're asking a question of such sorts, you have to look at it from the human perspective. A human, ignorant human, unknowing human, everything is remarkable to them, everything is unknowing to them. So if somebody has an accidental death, we call it an accident. But from the law's point of view, it's scripted. There's no accident. So it depends from which perspective you're looking at this. So from the human perspective, we have all these terminologies and we seek answers. The answer is no, there's no such thing as an accident. But it can look like an accident from the human perspective. So then, because you've labelled this now as an accidental death rather than a scripted death, right, does the departed soul-mind complex still go to the court? Yes, they do. What's the difference in the manner of the death? What difference? Death is death. So once the person is dead, if they're not initiated by a perfect living master, they have to go through the justice system. The justice system is the karmic system of accountability. So yes, they still have to wait their 49 days, they still have to go to the court. Their whole life is played before them, just the same as anybody else. And the consequence of all of that is then presented immediately to them, and they accept it. In this court, you have no say, because the evidence is overwhelming. It's a guilty verdict, so it's overwhelming. So when presented with the case and the consequence is meted out to you, just bow your head in acceptance, and you head off to your next life.
Okay, next question is asked, what are the spiritual consequences of death by suicide?
It depends who is committing suicide. Now I know that even Holy Masters are against this, and they have doom and gloom associated with it. It isn't like that. Death by suicide for a non-initiate is totally different to death by suicide for a satsangi. Let's look at the non-initiate. So somebody who's following the dictates of the mind and of the karmic system, they commit suicide for a particular reason. They can't cope anymore, so they commit suicide. However, if the world is in perfect order, did they commit it because it wasn't scripted? Did they act out a script, or did they follow the script? So let's establish this first. Nothing happens without hukum. Hukum, or divine will, controls everything. Now we as human beings, looking from this perspective, make a summary opinion about it. So if somebody has committed suicide, we say that they've died before their time, and therefore they've escaped their duties and responsibilities here. And in some extent that's true. But what happens then? Well, one of two things. Again, this is scripted. When somebody dies, they can live their notional life, what they would have served in this life, the ghost script. There's a ghost script. What they would have done, they have to live through here, so they become ghosts. They're haunted and they're disembodied, and they just are living the rest of their natural life in visible form, but they cannot communicate with anybody here. Unless there's a very strong bond with somebody here, then they come as haunting ghosts. But they live in the sub-astral realm, and in the sub-astral realm is an exact carbon copy of your life here. So this is before you head into the astral realm. So there's a realm called the sub-astral realm, which is a division between the physical and the spiritual. And this sub-astral realm contains souls, which we call disembodied souls, like your spirit guides, your ghosts and the hungry ghosts, and all the religions describe all these demonic beings or other things floating around there, including victims of suicide. They're hovering amongst all of this. So that's why Master said this is not a very pleasant state of existence. Don't do it. Yeah? You're not given additional punishment. Nothing is added to your punishment. But the state of existence for one who goes through here, which is scripted, is just that they have to go through this disembodied form for the duration of their time. And then if they come back into the physical creation, they have to leave off where they left off in the script. Yeah? So you have to understand that even when somebody goes to hell, that's in the script, or goes to heaven. Not everybody will take that route. Every single part must be played. From the Lord's point of view, there is no difference between how you live your life and how you don't live your life. The Lord does not distinguish between satsangi, non-satsangi, a high person and a low person. He just sees that all parts are being played very beautifully. And he helps them all. He would never deny anybody who comes knocking at the door. If it's in their script to knock at his door, the Lord doesn't judge anything. If the Lord were to judge anything in creation, nobody would go to them. Nobody would feel complete trust with them. But it's this unconditional love that these saints project and the Lord projects that allows us to approach the Lord even in the most wretched state. Even Hitler, was given the role of what to do. And we all vilify him here. Yet he was fulfilling a karmic role. Somebody had to play the demon. He was it. Neither he knew what he was doing, nor the humans who suffered or benefited knew what he was doing. But we just like to be dramatic. Because remember, this is the world of drama, staged in a dream, as Guru Nanak says. So here we dramatize everything. He was an evil one and a villain, and he killed so many. Who did he kill? Other than those that were scripted. And who did he help? Because if you speak to his close confidence, for example, he was very much for the subordinates, and he was against authority. He would go out of his way to help his low workers, like his secretaries and his footmen and everything, go out of the way to help them, give them favours and do everything good to them. And he was a vegetarian. In fact, he was the first one to introduce animal rights in Europe. That anybody who kills an animal is like killing a human being. It's wrong. And he maintained vegetarianism all his life. He was against animal cruelty, which sounds very ironic.
But the average person doesn't think about scripts.
They don't know all the good things. Like if you have the personal people who dealt with him, he was very kind to them. He was softly spoken. He would go out of his way. Despite being the supreme leader, the other commanders and everything would dismiss people. He said, no. Any ordinary person, in fact, the lower they were, the more he welcomed them. And he wanted to help them. Why? Because before he became powerful, he was a vagrant on the streets. He slept for 2 years on the streets. He knows what it's like to have no money, nowhere to live, living on park benches, sleeping on the streets. And nobody helped him. And he thought that if somebody had helped him, things would have been better for him. But he became resentful a little bit because of that. Because the people of higher think it's, oh, you're just a tramp. We're not going to go near you. So he made a point of helping the underdog. And he made a point of bringing down his generals and people of authority. In fact, anybody who displayed arrogance in front of him was put in their place. Similarly, the underdog he would rescue. Very strange, but this is the historic truth. So from those ones who were rescued and liberated by Hitler, they would say he was a great man. He helped them so much, he helped me. That's their point of view, that's their experience. And for those ones who were killed in the gas chambers, they said he was evil. Which one are you going to believe? The answer is both. But the point is that every role that has to be played in creation is arranged by hukum. Everybody's placed in. What we don't understand as essential human beings, and as we use the senses to them, is that people don't necessarily suffer upon death. The concept that you die with extreme pain doesn't happen for everybody. So, for example, if somebody is written, scripted, that they are fairly noble human beings, there's nothing much to account for, but they're included in the group, let's say Jewish, to be gassed, then those particular individuals felt nothing. The soul was withdrawn moments prior to the impact of whatever was happening to them, so they felt nothing.
But there's going to be certain people that do feel something.
Yes. So the ones who have been karmically bad themselves, they've swindled others, cheated others, they have to feel, yes. There's this, the karmic law could say it's perfect law. You might not like it, but it's perfectly just. In other words, as you sow, so shall you reap. Like for like, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Every concept has this. We say these things, but when it comes to our personal life, why me, why this? Because we don't understand that this is all part of the script. If the whole point of spirituality is to remove yourself from the karmic creation effects and connect yourself with your higher true self. Therefore, whatever the body and mind is going through, you don't care. If it's put in the gutter, you happily live in a gutter. If it's put in a palace, you live in a palace. But you're neither attached to the gutter nor you're attached to the palace. So one who is detached from these things, not because they're thinking about it, but because they're in tune with something better called higher awareness, then naturally they don't judge. Naturally they don't care. So even when they are harmed, they forgive automatically. They hold nothing against them. Because they know that person doesn't know what they're doing. It's just karma. It's scripted. How can you blame somebody for something they had no control over? Just because it was directed to you. And you suffered, so-called.
You've got to be a certain type of person, though.
I'm explaining to you about spiritual awareness.
Yeah. Cause I guess where I'm coming from, because I know, I'm not going to go into detail, but I know things that have happened to you, and you're very forgiving. Yes. And I look at myself and I think, wow, I don't know if I could be that way.
Well, as I was told by Master, I'm here to be a martyr.
There you go.
So here I'm being martyred.
Yeah.
So what? At least I'm not going to die on the cross. You know?
True.
So don't worry about my example. But my example is there for those around me to see what you can go through, how much you can go through without losing your balance. And if somebody says to me, oh, you really struggled with this, you worked hard. No, I didn't. It was natural. Why? Because of what I'm connected with. If I'm connected with something more than the physical, what does it matter what the physical is going through? What people may think or say or do to you or try to harm you, who cares? The karma is that you have to go through this as an example. Anyone, if they're going to be a teacher, let's say, and they want to elevate those around them, they cannot live outside of the laws. They cannot live in a palace, weighted on hand and foot, never knowing what suffering is. How can any ordinary person follow them? Say, well, it's okay for you to say these things. You've not gone through it. But that very person, shoulder to shoulder with them, is suffering, but they're handling it better. There is the proof. That is one to be admired, because it shows you what spiritual teaching can do. When you gain spiritual insight and wisdom, it awakens something in you that transcends you beyond this. Now, a physical person with a physical eyes cannot see spirituality. You tell me, whenever you've seen a master, can you see any spiritual in them? No, they're just physical. So how do they demonstrate that there's something more than the physical? What would impress most people? Suffering. Everybody understands suffering, universal suffering. So let's say somebody suffers and they handle it with such dignity and grace, so completely so, and so naturally so. Then that person says, yeah, they got something. They're not just talking. This person has something. It's proof. Yeah? And this, for some people, it helps them to meditate further. Say, I want what that one's got. Because if he can take that crap, then mindful crap should be easily overcome by this spiritual practice. So when you ask them, well, how did you do it? Say, well, I just did my spiritual practice. And as a result, the Lord gifted me with enlightenment. So what are they going to say to you? Do your spiritual practice, you'll have the same. They don't say to you, I'm better than you. I'm greater than you. Look up to me. No master. If any master says that to you, you run away from them. They're not masters, they're egotists. A real master says, why didn't you join me? Why didn't you become like me? Masters come to transform others into themselves, not to create separations. They use their example to say, look, you know, brother, sister, I'm like you. Look, I'm physical like you. I have all these qualities, but there's something else that I have been given. And I'd like you to share that because it's inside you too. I'd like you to do the same, to prove it exists to you, motivate you to take action. Yeah, to say, well, rather than just be amazed at this person and put them on a pedestal, because if that happens, then the entire thing has failed. But if you say, wow, I know he's a human being, like everybody else, yet you've risen above the limitations, and then you say that this was gifted to you just by doing a little bit of practice, just by being an earnest seeker, just by being prepared to search for the holy truth no matter what the cost. That's the magic part. There's two parts to this. seekers of the truth, and then the brave say, no matter what the cost. That's like Guru Gobind Singh said, are you prepared to cut off your head and hand it to the Guru's feet? He didn't mean literally, he meant metaphorically. It was, are you prepared to give up your ego, all sense of you, for the truth? Do you want the truth that badly? So there comes a point in life when somebody reaches that through dukh, suffering. So suffering is a great teacher, great benefactor. And that helps you to become enlightened quickly. But if you're a bit softy, then it takes a few lifetimes. You can't suffer too much. So they give you a little prick here and there. You go out, out, out. But, for somebody who's ready, they cut off the head. Yeah? And we call these ones, wow, you're remarkable. Because you suffered so much, but you didn't turn bitter and twisted. Instead, you became enlightened and you're helping others and you forgive them all. How can you forgive these people? Or how can you have mercy upon everyone? Or how can you not look bad upon anything? You see, that demonstrates an enlightenment process, not a mental process. You see, so that's why anybody who's enlightened, look at their life, how they deal with things. Because they become angry, greedy, jealous, hatred. If they do all these things, if they have all these human weaknesses, they cannot be enlightened. They must rise above these things. However, they can demonstrate lower levels of these things momentarily just to teach something, to demonstrate something. But not because they actually hate anyone. So sometimes masters have demonstrated a slight anger. And it looks like they're angry, but they're not. It's just because that's what you will respond to. So they give you something that you'll respond to. Because they're all nicey, you'll just carry on the way you are. You won't think that what you're doing may not be helpful or kind or wrong. So sometimes you have to be a little bit stern. But never from the heart. You can see actually that the feeling that comes with it is for your own interest. You never think that the master is doing something against you. It's an interesting thing because when you associate with a living master or an enlightened one, they may act sometimes a little bit odd, but it's always with purpose. There's always a bigger picture involved, or they're just clearing karma. Because remember, they're karmic beings. Here, they still have the same karma as you. They have to succeed in some things, fail in others. But the difference is they never lose their balance. They never become miserable. They say, oh, okay, sera, what will be, will be. They seem totally different. They don't worry about the future. Have they got enough money saved for a pension? Or whatever. Or how they're going to eat tomorrow if they have nothing. They say the Lord will provide. He provided today, He'll provide tomorrow. Why do I worry about such things? Because they know. So, yeah, the idea of a physical enlightened one in front of you is that you can learn from them. Why not take advantage of that? Why not ask them how you do it? An enlightened one is infinitely patient. Because if something so great is given to you freely, why do you want to keep it a secret? Why do you want to hold it away? But at the same time, you know that not everybody is meant to understand. So you just sit like a shop, sits open. And if a customer comes past, it goes in the shop. But the man in the next town doesn't even know the shop exists. Yeah? Those ones meant to come will come. That's why masters do not promote themselves in any way. Because if they did, they're the showmen. Yeah? They do as much as they can, in fact, to keep out of the public eye. Because whoever is written for them to come will come. And because they've come before them, that person could be of immense help for them. Particularly if they have that connection, they feel an affinity, they feel connected to the enlightened one, then anything is possible. That's the wonder of it. Any questions on that? Yes?
You said earlier about someone who experiences a traumatic death.
Yes.
When you say that the soul leaves the body, do you mean that the experience leaves you, as there is no soul in the body.
No, the soul and the mind complex, doesn't matter how you die, leaves the body. But each one has a different role. The soul at that point is just a battery. It's just powering the mind. So the soul is sleeping, you could say slumbering. Yeah? And it's just a silent power. The soul is along for the ride. The mind is the one taking up all the consequences. The soul doesn't feel anything. The soul does not have any of the five senses. It has no emotions and it has no mind of its own. So therefore the soul doesn't feel anything.
So the soul's not leaving the body.
The soul and the mind are knotted together.
Right.
But the soul part doesn't feel anything. The soul simply empowers the mind to keep it going. Because without the presence of the soul, the mind would cease. It becomes inert.
So when you're saying that the soul leaves the body, you mean the experience leaves you, really?
The soul-mind complex leaves the body. Not the experience. The experience has been had. The experiencer finishes one covering, called the body, and now becomes only the soul-mind complex. It's still the experiencer, but they've left the physical form and now moves on. So whatever happens to the mind-soul complex happens in spirit, because the mind-soul complex is spiritual.
But
Yeah?
technically, there's no soul in the body, is there?
Of course there's a soul in the body. Where's the battery? What powers the body? What powers the mind?
I thought the soul is not at this stage.
You're talking about something different. You're talking about, is the soul in this creation at all, or is it projected from Satgurus?
Yeah.
That's a different thing. From that point of view, the soul itself, if you call it an entity, let's say you decided the soul is an entity that you can touch, feel, see, smell and so on, using your five senses, then no, that soul is not present in the human body, or anybody. But the projection of the soul, the projection of its attention, focus of attention, its surat, that creates a mental body around it, yes, that is very much, the surat of the soul is very much present with the mind. But yes, the actual soul is still in Satgurus. In other words, nothing has been created beyond Satgurus. The projection of creation is simply that, a projection within Satgurus itself. That's what we call the rest of creation below Satgurus illusory.
So you're explaining it in these ways because there's no other way to explain it. When you say someone's experiencing a traumatic death, and
I have to explain at the level that people use language. And most people would understand the language of the day.
Yeah.
But let's say we were in Satyug, and I could communicate with you telepathically, which is how we communicate in Satyug. Then I could give you a three-dimensional answer. So when I say the same thing, all the other implications are immediately following with it. But we can't do that with speech. It's linear.
Yeah. So
Okay?
ultimately, I heard that soul doesn't exist.
Well, if you go to the level of an army lock, then there's no souls.
Yeah, because that would mean separation.
Yeah.
So
There is a point at which the soul doesn't exist. But the projection of the soul, the surat, is here. And to prove it, when you withdraw your attention, you will hear the resonance of the soul, called the shabad. You'll hear the sound current within.
I was listening to ISTAuk what he's talked recently, and he said soul doesn't exist ultimately.
Ultimately.
Because there's no separation.
Ultimately.
There's no
But we are in creation.
Yeah.
When creation existed, duality had to be there. Yeah? So he's talking, you have to put in context what he's saying. Ultimately, the one is only one.
It's just consciousness, isn't it?
Yes. It's super conscious, one divided into the many. And the many have been given that individual consciousness. They are conscious.
So we're just using these words like soul, mind, just to make the story make sense, the experience make sense.
Say it like that if you want. But for the vast majority of people, they understand the meaning. And what's important is the meaning is understood. It doesn't matter the words or the terminology. Okay?
Thank you.
Right. Anybody else? No? Okay, let's go.
Okay, question about the yogas. You've talked about this already, but just to clarify. It has been stated that we have entered Dwapara Yoga in 2012, but in other books it also stated that we are still in Kala Yoga age for the next 430,000 years or so. Why is there such a difference?
Well, it's not really. You have to understand the origin of the 430,000 years for Kali Yuga is a fairly recent entry, and about the 1st century BC. Before that, they understood the real Yuga system. So originally, this larger period of the 430,000 was not so. It didn't exist, like I said, until the 1st century. But later astrologers decided that the shorter planetary periods, or the shorter cosmic periods, should span much greater amounts of time to account for the age of the Earth, the immense age of the Earth and the universe. And the concept of cycles was well understood by that time. Like 60 degrees in a circle, and 60 minutes in time, and 360 days of the year in their calendar. So they decided that everything followed a cycle of finite time. Therefore, because of the vast newly discovered age of the Earth and everything, they decided that the old knowledge should be updated. They simply multiplied the old version by 360, because they said that makes a whole year. You would talk about cycles, yeah? So if you multiply 1,296 by 60, you end up with the 432,000 years minus the transition period, 25,000 years, and so on. So there's this, they exclude that. So they say it's 432,000 years for Kali Yuga. That's where that idea came from. So actually it is correct, the system that we in Sant adopt, in that, Kali Yuga is actually only 1,296. But there's a plus and a minus, they go up and down. So you have ascending from Kali Yuga to Satgurus and descending from Satgurus to Kali Yuga, not switch. Another mistake they made was that you go from Kali Yuga to Satgurus suddenly. That the Kali Yuga is at the end and then suddenly it turns into Satgurus. How is that possible? If I turn a fan off, it gradually stops rotating. It doesn't just suddenly stop. Cycles do not suddenly change abruptly. No cycle that we have witnessed in science or anywhere has an abrupt change where there's a boundary. It doesn't happen like that. But the poor simple people of the time never really thought this through very well. So then they said, okay, then to account for these immense periods of time, more than human existence, because anatomically modern humans haven't even been here for 432,000 years. They've only been here for 287,000 years. So that means never have we experienced any other era. Yeah. So you see, again, they didn't know this. So yes, there is a discrepancy, but I can assure the inquirer that we have entered Dwapara Yuga since 2012, and that there is a transition phase going through. And in time, anybody who goes to the astral realm, because all of this is just in the astral realm, then you'll see all the eras marked there. Anybody can visit this. Even the yogis, you don't have to be initiated. Okay. Yeah?
Thank you. Got a couple of questions about initiation.
Mm-hmm.
Some satsangis get initiation from a perfect living master through a representative, or currently via Zoom, without seeing the physical form of the master. Are these initiations as effective as being in the physical presence of the master, since Dhyan has to be done?
Dhyan. This is a problem with the modern age, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
We spoke about how do you recognise a true master. It must be somebody physically present when you are. You cannot be initiated by Zoom call where you've never seen the physical master.
Especially with AI as well.
With AI as well, yeah, because you don't even know whether you're seeing the real thing or being really initiated. No. I'm afraid that the answer is that when we talk about a perfect living master, they are rare. Most people think that anybody who speaks with a little wisdom and lights one, there must be a perfect living master. No. It's very rare. And most of them keep quiet. In fact, there are 5th level masters around, and they don't say anything to anybody. They've done their time, they're enjoying the fruits thereof, and have not been given permission to speak. Others, unfortunately, have been told to speak. So then they have to put themselves out there and say, hey, I've got something to tell you. But the real Holy Masters shun any publicity anything, because they know that there's a list handed to them, a list of people that they can help only, and it's not for everybody. So they operate very differently. So if somebody's doing this by video or Zoom call, then I don't think, in my opinion, that I've not, from my experience, I've never seen a perfect living master operate this way. So there's not. And therefore, the person's quite right. You have to see the physical presence of the master, their face in particular, even only once in your life. You don't have to keep seeing them, just the once, and then be initiated by them, so you can have the honor of the face to recognize them.
Okay, talking of physical form, the next question says, what happens to the satsanga who does not see the physical form of the master before his death?
Presumably, if he has a master, he would have been initiated, he would have seen the physical form at least once. If somebody hasn't been initiated but is a follower, there are many people who follow a holy master but they never see it, then they have to come back. The time has not come.
Okay. Next question. Babaji has appointed Hazur Jasdi Gil Ji as his successor. Is Hazur Ji a reincarnation of the Great Master?
No, not of the Great Master, but a part of Hazur Maharaji. So yes, there is a connection between Hazur Charan Singh Ji and the present Master. But I don't want to go into any more detail than that.
Fair enough. Okay, I got a couple of questions regarding souls. Ishwar Puri Ji teaches that as we progress spiritually, we come to see that fewer and fewer beings are truly real until we meet our original soul group in the higher spiritual regions and ultimately merge back with the Creator where there is only oneness. Does this mean that here, on the physical level, many of the humans I observe or interact with are not individuated souls, but more like programs or extras, while only some belong to my true soul group?
I think this one must be a great movie follower of things like The Matrix and other things.
We like those questions, don't we?
You see, when the soul... Okay, I'm trying to simplify this to cut down the time. Actually, there's a big answer associated with this, because part of what this questioner is saying is true, but in a totally different way that they're thinking. You see, when the creation came into being, and Satgurus was there, and Kal had fallen and created the fourth realm, Kal needed souls to populate that realm. Now this is beyond the karmic system. We're talking about souls of Mahakal in the fourth grand division, the totality of consciousness, where souls look like oneness, but they're not perfect oneness. They're not perfect, they're imperfect oneness. So we say they are fallen. Now, so when Kal, or the ego attribute of the Supreme Lord, fell from grace and was given the role of developing his own creation as reward for his 72 yugas of standing on one leg, so they say. It didn't actually happen like that. The meaning metaphorically is that he did great austerities to his Lord, and being the ego attribute, his way of seeking a reward was not darshan of his master, but to run his own creation. Yeah, an egotist, right? Was to rule his own domain. But the trouble was, though, that just because he could rule his own domain, there was no souls to populate it. Where is he going to get the souls from? So again, another 72 yugas of austerities were performed so that he could request from his father, Satgurus, and I'm using his and father very loosely, okay? I'm telling it in story form because this is the easiest way to explain it, right? And you can get it. There is a point to it which is more important than the terminology, just in case. So he appealed to his father. His father said, "Sure, I'll give you some souls called the Seed of Life, the Seed of Life pod." So there were some souls that he created specially for Kal to play with. These souls have been given the destiny for the entire duration of the creation to remain separated. These souls are automatons. So they have been given roles to play, and they play their part as background souls in creation. That is absolutely true. But that does not apply here to the physical. We're talking about the fourth realm and the third realm and so on. But all the souls that enter into the karmic realms are real, in the sense that they are going through the cycle of karma. Those pod souls, if you want to call them that, never go through the karmic cycle. How would a soul come from the fourth division to the third division? And how would a soul from the third division come into the causal or the mindfulness realms? They can't. There's no means for them to travel between one place to another. Just like we cannot go just physically to the astral realm. We can't say, let me take an astral machine, sit on it, and we're going to physically go to the astral realm. It's just not possible. Okay? So those souls remain there, and they play the role. So they're given a role to play within that, and they play their role very beautifully. However, there's another group of souls which was sent here. So when the Lord divided itself up to witness the glory of His creation, it wasn't satisfied that these souls should only be in the spiritual realms. It wanted to create true duality or separation in an illusory world, a karmic illusory world where cause and consequence would rule the day. Therefore we have drama, because when there's cause and consequence, there's a drama immediately. So in order to experience drama, an entire creation had to be created, special creation we call lower creation, which is from Trikuti, the causal realm, down to the physical. Now the souls who came into that system, were very different to the background souls. They were sent here. But this is the thing. Initially, they were sent, but then was placed upon them in Parbrahm, each one with a set desire. Right? Desires were given to the souls to have an experience and an adventure. So now when they entered Parbrahm, their condition changed. And their condition changed from being pure, pristine worshippers of the Lord, not wanting anything, to now having desires attached to them, which the saints call stains upon the soul. Right? Now, because of these, suddenly these souls then wanted to actually have an experience. These souls were sent into creation in a collective group. Trillions of them were sent at the same time, not one. To make a drama, you have to have all people in the play. Imagine a movie where only the hero was there, nobody else turned up. Wouldn't be much of a film, would it? So all the extras had to be there, the scenery and the extra people, everything to make a movie, right? So when souls were sent by the Lord to have a particular experience of creation, of a particular form of creation, they were sent as a group of trillions of souls. Trillions of them, all together. And these trillions were given their script at the time of Parbrahm. So in lower Parbrahm, they were given the script. In upper Parbrahm, they were perfect souls, just longing for the Father, longing for their source. What happened in Parbrahm that transformed these souls, totally turned, like we call Gurumukh, eyes turned towards the Guru, right? Eyes turned towards the Father, suddenly looking at the adventure that's to follow. It's a very interesting thing, because it's not normal for the soul. Something had to be placed on it, and it's when they crossed the Mansarava lake. You would have heard this Mansarava lake. It's a lake in Parbrahm in which a crow turns into a swan, but the reverse is true also. A swan turns into a crow. Yeah. So they go through this state. It's not literally a lake, okay, but let's say it's a spiritual void that they have to cross to become imperfect. So now these souls have a stain of imperfection in them, just enough to create desires to want to have an adventure in creation. So now when it comes to creating a mind tool and picking up a mind, a character, they happily do so. Why? They still know their souls, so they know they're invincible. They don't fear the consequence, because they know, I'm going to get back eventually. But they happily take on a character. So then they become willing participants. Yeah? But in a real sense, they're not. Now, these are the souls that are having all the karmic experiences that you see. And therefore, these souls are the only ones that populate the karmic realms. So it's a very unique, different setup. No background souls. This person is talking about higher up, much higher, beyond Parbrahm, beyond the lower part of Parbrahm, where, yes, automatons are there for those creations to continue in a different format that you cannot understand. Because there's no time and space, there's no drama as such. They experience creation totally differently. Let's forget about them. I'm not even going to that, because you're not from that ilk. You're here physically, so therefore you can't be one of them. You're here to have an experience. So now the mind has picked a character, you've become the character, you believe that you're this person, and now you're playing your part. So, all the souls that have the same situation, the same dilemma as you, they're all real. So it's incorrect for them to say that they've met souls here which weren't real, that there were extras or programs and so on. I think that's just the stuff of movies.
Okay. I think there's a second part to the question.
Yes.
If many beings were met in the physical world are not individuated souls, but more like supporting characters or projections within the play, how can we discern between the two? For example,
There isn't.
For example, can I finish?
Yes, yes.
For example, are family members with whom we experience deep karmic connections always individuated souls on their own journey, or could some of them also be projections?
No.
Okay.
It's simply not possible for the background souls from fourth level and the third level, the top of the third, to be here in any capacity. All the souls, whether you like them or not, whether you connect with them or not, are undergoing an individuated experience here, and all the souls are part of yourself, which you learned in Parbrahm, at the top of Parbrahm. Yeah. So no, there's no case that anybody in the family, one family member is just an extra.
Yeah.
But oh no. To prove this, just grab them and pinch them, and if they go ouch, then they're definitely feeling something, right?
Okay, I've got another question. I've got about 6 questions. So if anyone's got any,
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Dolores Cannon says that, for example, going back to what you just said, is when you go to a football stadium and the people sitting at a distance that you think are sitting at a distance, they're not actual souls kind of thing. It's like it's just there to make the whole thing.
Again, I think she's watched some CGI graphics and movies where they have 2 or 3 people real in the front and the rest of it's CGI creating the rest of the audience. No, I'm sorry, no CGI here, only in movie makers.
So everybody's an actual soul there.
Yes, everybody's an actual. Go up to them and shout at them, pin them, put a pin in them. If they don't react, then I'll agree with you. But if you get a punch in the nose, don't come to me complaining either.
So she was saying that if you focus on it, and then if you focus on them, then they become part of the actual experience. If you don't focus on them, then they just...
You have to understand that our poor Dolores was not spiritually advanced.
Right.
Yeah, she was a medium. She had her own face. She connected with these spirit souls in the overlap zone. So, from a satsangi point of view, we shouldn't take such things so seriously. When these people speak, they speak for a certain audience. You shouldn't be part of that audience. You should know more than that. Okay? Yes. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Okay, this is about sharing insights. What insights would you like to share as we navigate this illusory existence? I understand you advocate for us to meditate, but what should we be mindful of each day as we go about our lives that will support our true knowing and time on earth? Your words of wisdom are appreciated.
There's a lot that could be said, but I think from a very human perspective, the easiest way to follow this life is to live by the 7 noble ways of living, which I mentioned earlier. I mentioned in the previous talk, and I'll just briefly summarize them. And if you can do this, this is also the mark of a true disciple, but even a spiritual aspirant can work towards it, then you have lived your life well. Because karma and your script is already predetermined. Your entire script has been there before you take birth. So don't look at the events of your life and think you can change them, or try to plan ahead too much, or live too far in the future, or dwell too much in the past. What good will that serve you? It'll serve you no good. Nothing will change. May as well take a practical point of view, like Babaji says. Live in the now. And to live in the now, you have a certain measure of ability to conduct yourself in a certain way. So I'm going to give you, let's say, summarize the 7 noble ways of living, so you can understand this and follow this. And if you can do this, all the rest will follow. So the first thing is, do no intentional harm, either to yourself, others, or the planet, whether through thought, word, or deed. This is a very important one, because this is the argument of karma. Because bad karma only comes through some sort of harm. If you're creating harm, then the result will be harm against you. And since you don't like harm, you don't like it when you experience harm of some sort, then don't start the process. So do no intentional harm. But then again, if you unintentionally harm, don't worry. Just seek forgiveness where you can, or learn not to do it again. Because now you know, next time, that causes harm, and you do it again, the punishment is even greater. So, yeah, do no intentional harm. Then the second thing is, do not judge, criticize, or condemn in the creation. Because there's a story unfolding here. There's a director of the play. You are part of the play, playing your part. You're not in the position of the director. So with what means are you judging, condemning, or criticizing? If you do, as Jesus said, as you judge, so shall ye be judged. Then the Lord will judge you measure for measure. Yeah? And Jesus further said, by ye measure, so shall ye be measured. So don't do it. It's not your role to get involved with creation. Because the moment you do that, you're creating a whole heap of problems for yourself. It's enough that you get through the day unscathed, day by day. Believe me, let tomorrow take care of itself. Yeah, you have enough problems for today. And then the third one is, do not unnecessarily be a burden upon others. In other words, fulfill your karmic responsibilities here. Because if you don't, and you cause suffering, harm. And as a result of that harm, you'll have to pay the consequence. At the same time, if you don't fulfill your role here, you have to come back. It's a sign that you're going to have to come back again. But if you manage to wrap up all your duties and responsibilities here, by the time you've been dead, you've done well. So that's why you should be diligent in performing your duties and responsibilities in life, and never be a burden to others. Never let's just say, let somebody else do it. No, you should do yourself, but what you can. Yeah. And then the fourth one is, be forever grateful or appreciative for what you have. Actually, appreciation is the reason why you're put on the path. You have very little control of anything, but the Lord wants to be appreciated. Okay, in this level. When you look at it from this point of view. Appreciation is the ticket to salvation and full rescue. Gratitude is an extension of appreciation. So gratitude and appreciation, because you have been given the opportunity now to escape in a human form, whereas countless other animals and others around you have not been given none, not been initiated, they're stuck. So therefore, once you're initiated, once you've been given that assurance of rescue, you should be forever grateful, forever appreciative. That means no matter what is offered to you, whether you have only 1 grain of rice to eat or a bowl full of rice, just be grateful you have even a grain. Because no matter what is given to you now, you are forgiven for consuming that rice or whatever part you're playing. So how can you not be grateful? It doesn't matter whether you're given a big plate or a small plate. Nothing of this matters in the higher regions. So don't be jealous of others that they have this big house, you got a small house, or they have these cars. Why bother with all these things? Be grateful for what you have, because I guarantee you're far better off than most people in the world, especially with being initiated. But you don't appreciate initiation. So being appreciated is being appreciated that you're on your way home. And you should find every means to fulfill that. So that's that one. Then number 5, always seek the high truth. Yeah? So in anything, seek the highest truth. Don't settle for a mere temporary truth, half truth. Seek the full truth. Because true wisdom comes with full truth experience. Now in spirituality, the high truth is who you are, your real self. What are you really? Don't connect with the mind and the body, but say, is there something powering these two? Because even the person who's talking about themselves, say, this is my car, my body, my mind. When do you ever hear the soul saying, this is mine? This concept of mine and thine is a product of mind. Therefore, the mind cannot be you. The mind must be powered by something. Now, the only way to see that is through a perfect living master. This trap of illusion is so perfect that the mind can never find its way out using its own intellect. It's trapped in a circle, and it just goes round in circles. It can't break the circle. Where is there a break in the circle? The circle is complete. Now, if somebody breaks into the circle, from outside of it, it can release the content of the circle. It can free you. That's why you need an outside agency, we call a master, to break into the karmic realms and pull you out. It's not a question of you pushing your way out or somehow doing some effort and escaping. No. You'll go on forever and ever and ever round, like a rat on a wheel. It keeps on running the wheel. Have you ever seen a rat through that get out? It doesn't. It just keeps on going forever, hoping to find a way out. That's the situation you're in. You're like a rat in a wheel, but you think you're more intelligent. Yeah? So, this is an important thing. Seek the truth. What is your real state? What is the meaning behind all this? So that's another thing you should start building up within you. Spending time in silence, in solitude, in contemplation, thinking about the real significance of everything and marveling at it all. And then the 6th one would be forever mindful of your impact upon others and on the planet. So whatever you may do, always think, what impact is it having? Is it positive or negative? Always try to be a positive influencer, a positive impact upon everything, whether people, animals, or the planet. So walk around a beacon of light and positivity. And then the final one, 7th one, is do your spiritual practice, which means do your meditation and connect with the Shabbat. Now it's important to understand that most satsangis even do not understand the point of meditation, or they do not understand what part of meditation works and what part doesn't. There's 2 parts to meditation. There's the light and the sound part. The light meditation is for the mind. The sound is for the soul. Actually. Now this is not widely taught or expressed in Sant. Because what will happen, of course, the moment you empower people with this, they say, well, forget the light part then, we'll go straight for the sound. Because that's what we want. But what they don't understand is, like a ladder, the body and the mind soul complex is like a ladder. You have to step on the lower rungs to get to the higher ones. How is it possible to go straight to the higher ones? It doesn't work that way, because the process of salvation and liberation is that you have to tread each rung, because it is an adventure. In this particular creation, we have to experience an adventure going home to make it more interesting, because that's the way it works. So when we came into this creation, that's how it was. It's not like you switch on and suddenly a person comes from full ignorance to full enlightenment just with a click. It doesn't happen like that. It's a gradual process. So therefore, you have to what they call purify or transcend the mind through a series of steps before you get to the soul. So you do the light and the sound.
सो देहि पाजे हार की सेव भजो गोविंद फूल मात जा मानस जन्म का यही ला